Good afternoon, everyone. It is 12:06, Thursday, August 11th, 2022, and I'm calling to order this virtual meeting of the Los Angeles Probation Oversight Commission. My name is Frankie Carrillo, and I am the chair of the commission. Now, Wendy Julian, our executive director, will explain how those of you calling in today can participate during this meeting. And then, Wendy, will you please take the roll?
Yes, thank you. And good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. I'm happy to see so many people logged on today. We encourage public participation in our meetings. We welcome your comments live at the meeting today or in writing. There will be an opportunity for public comment on each agenda item, and then again at the end of the meeting for any items not on the agenda. For all of the items on the agenda except for one, it's going to go like this. Chair Carrillo will introduce the item. There'll be a presentation. Then we'll take public comment, and then the commission will discuss the item. On our first item of business today, the issue around the investigation regarding the Office of the Inspector General's investigation, we're actually going to have Chair Carrillo ask a few questions before we go to public comment, just for purposes of clarification, and then we'll go to public comment and come back for commissioner questions. The best way to make a live comment during the meeting is to register via the link on the agenda. We have some of you pre-registered today. You click the link, enter the password, fill out the form. But if you're already here and you'd like to make a public comment and you haven't pre-registered, please use the raise your hand function and we'll add you to the queue. The way to raise your hand depends on your device. If you're using an Android or iOS phone, you tap the three dots for more options and then type on the little hand, click on the little hand icon. If you're logged in from an iPad or a tablet, an Android tablet, tap on the smiling face for reactions and then you can raise your hand from that. If you have any technical questions or can't find the raise your hand button, send a chat to the host and we'll put you in the queue. If you're calling in and want to make public comment, when we call for public comment on the item, just dial *3, *3 on your phone to activate the raise hand feature. We'll call on you with your phone number and then you'll just have to press *6 to accept the unmute request and begin with your comment. Also, there is now a two-part unmuting process. So we unmute you and then you have to unmute yourself, even if you're on the WebEx. Everybody will have 2 minutes today unless the chair determines we need to reduce that time based on the length of the agenda and the number of commenters. If you wish to make your comment in writing, please send us an email to info@poc.lacounty.gov. Janae's about to put that in the chat so you don't have to memorize it. Please don't send your public comment in the chat. Only the host will see it and it won't be part of the public record and it won't be logged. The panelists cannot see the chat. The chat function doesn't comport with the Brown Act, so that's why we do it that way. Our meeting is being broadcast live on Facebook today. You can watch the meeting on Facebook Live and the recording will be there afterwards, but there's no engagement with users on Facebook. Please follow our social media accounts on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at LA County POC for more information about our meetings and invite others to attend. We've also launched a YouTube account and Ismael is doing a really fantastic job of creating recaps of the meeting. If you want to go and watch specific sections of the meeting or the whole meeting or parts of the meeting, it's a really useful tool. Bienvenidos, le damos una cordial bienvenida a miembros de la comunidad que prefieren hacer sus comentarios públicos en español. A ustedes les daremos 4 minutos y podemos proveer traducción si quiere o usted puede proveer su propio traductor. Al iniciar su comentario, nomás avísenos que prefiere hacer su comentario en español. So I'm now going to call the roll. Please unmute yourselves, commissioners. We'll start with Commissioner Dolores Canales.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you. Present.
Commissioner Danielle Dupuy.
Present.
Commissioner Sean Garcia-Lays.
Present.
Commissioner Shay Jackson.
I am here.
Commissioner Samuel Lewis.
Present.
Commissioner Donald Meredith.
Present.
Commissioner Dominique Nong.
Good afternoon. Present.
Commissioner Yamashiro, I don't see. I'm just going to check that participant list really quickly because I know some people had trouble signing in, but we'll let you know if Commissioner Yamashiro joins during the meeting. And Chair Frankie Carrillo.
I'm here. Thank you, Wendy.
Okay, so we have quorum and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Okay, now we will proceed with the remaining agenda items for today. Item number 2 is to approve July 28th minutes. Do we have any written public comments or live public comments for this item, Wendy?
We do not.
Okay, commissioners, can I have a motion to approve July 28th minutes?
I'll move.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Meredith and second by Commissioner Canales. Thank you. Are there any changes to the minutes? Okay, hearing none, commissioners, please unmute yourselves and vote with a voice vote. Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Don't sound like there's anyone opposing it. Give me a second here. Motion carries. Thank you, commissioners. Okay, moving on to item number 3 is to discuss and take appropriate action on the progress of the investigation being conducted by the Office of the Inspector General regarding the probation's involvement with Justin Flores, who is accused of killing 2 El Monte police officers in June of 2022. We'll first hear an overview from OIG, followed by a response from Chief Adolfo Gonzalez. Then I will ask a few questions of Mr. Bates and Chief Gonzalez. Then we will take public comments, and finally, we will come back to the commissioners for questions and comments. Mr. Bates, please proceed with your report.
Thank you. Good afternoon, commissioners. As you know, we are currently conducting an inquiry into the supervision of Mr. Flores by the probation department. And included in that, we'll be looking at the supervision personally of the department of Mr. Flores. And that includes the manner in which the supervision was conducted, as well as the timeliness of it. Also, we will be looking at the risk assessment and looking to see if the probation department properly assessed Mr. Flores upon beginning the supervision. Furthermore, there were apparently warrants that were outstanding, so we're going to be looking into whether or not those were appropriately dealt with. And then some additional information that apparently was received by the probation department that may have been better to share with other agencies to act upon it, maybe within probation itself, and other aspects related to obtaining that information. But more importantly, we want to make sure that this is not a systemic problem, that this is not something that is likely to happen again, and that will cause us to look at the system itself and see how these things fall through the cracks. So with that being said, I'm open for questions at any time.
Thank you, Mr. Bates. Chief Gonzalez, do you have any comments or a response to the OIG's report?
Sure, I can carry on, members of the Probation Oversight Commission and Mr. Eric Bates. Thank you for your assessment. Yeah, we've been cooperating with the investigation from day one, providing information as requested. I met with OIG and trying to work hand in hand to see what we can do to correct any issues that might have been systemic or issues that could have been addressed differently. We met just last week again, and I think we welcome any kind of recommendation from the OIG.
Thank you, Chief. Mr. Bates, let me start off with you, if you don't mind. When do you expect to have completed your investigation?
That's a good question, and I say that because our time frame will primarily be dictated by the issues that we uncover. As we look more into it, we found more issues that we wanted to delve more deeply into to provide a very accurate report. So I would hate to throw a number out, but I would say possibly within the next 30, 45 days. But again, it really depends on what information we find out, because as we are going into it, we're needing to go into some other areas that we didn't anticipate originally. So that's about the best estimate I think I can give that will be appropriate at this time.
That sounds fair. Thank you. Another question that I have for you is, how will the results of the investigation be shared with the Board of Supervisors, along with obviously the POC here, and ultimately the public?
We anticipate releasing a public report. So because these are issues that obviously affect the general public. So that's my anticipation, that it would be a general report.
Okay. Lastly, Mr. Bates, let me just ask you, will you be making recommendations to the probation department when this is all said and done with?
Yes. Yes, we will make recommendations.
Chief Gonzalez, please tell us what steps have been taken or will be taken regarding an internal investigation of this incident.
Yes, thank you for the question. Yes, as we initiated the internal affairs investigation, which is in process. We conducted a caseload assessment to determine if there any patterns exist, not only within this particular case, but throughout the department. So we'll taking a deep dive to see what else we can identify. And as Mr. Bates said, it's kind of like when you're investigating something, you peel an onion, more things come up. So that's what we're looking at as well. What else is out there?
Okay. Also, Chief, when do you expect to have it completed, your own investigation?
As you know, for the Peace Officer Bill of Rights, we have up to 12 months to complete the investigation. I don't think it'll take us that long. I'm hoping in the next 3 or 4 months to be able to come back with some findings.
Okay. I have a few more questions for you, Chief. Will the result of the investigation be shared with the Board of Supervisors, along with the POC and the public? And if so, how do you plan to do that?
Well, I will have to consult with county counsel and see what information can be released, but I'm prepared to release the information to the board and here to the POC. And of course, once it goes to the POC, it becomes public. So we'll take that into consideration as well.
Thank you, Chief. And I have one last question for you before we open it up to public comments and comments and questions from the commissioners. Looking forward, has the department already made any changes to policy or practices as a result of this incident?
Yes, if I can remind everyone, back in March of 2020, we had a worldwide pandemic. Not only was the county shut down, but the courts were shut down. The courts even sent a communication to law enforcement and to us that they would prefer that we did not do a lot of technical violations because they had a bad log. Since then, we have reopened. So what we've done since this incident is communicated with our staff that we're returning to pre-pandemic reporting. We never used to do voice reporting prior to the pandemic. It was something we did during pandemic to facilitate the communication to the courts. Now we're returning back to pre-pandemic reporting, which means we'll have face-to-face communication, interaction with our clients. In addition to that, we're also including the substance abuse or substance use testing, which is administered by at the field offices, as well as administering the risk assessment, tool assessment, which should be done in person to get a better assessment of what the individual client may need, and again, tailor the services to the individual client. In addition, we've done a number of other things. We're evaluating the core supervision model as it stands today. We're evaluating all the cases that are either low or medium that have any kind of felony possession of a weapon, and we're enhancing supervision for those cases. And based on this audit that we've been doing, we have identified about 160 cases that were ranked as low, but still had a felony possession of a firearm. So those cases are now being submitted to higher supervision levels, and we're transferring all those cases to field offices that are close to our clients' homes to avoid any kind of barriers to reporting to the office. In addition, we're also updating and revising our policies, especially evaluating our core violations. That includes expediting handling of matters that require immediate attention, especially if public safety is at risk or is of concern. We're updating the policy relating to client contact, voice reporting, and referral for services. In addition, we're evaluating the risk assessment tool we call DRAT, which evaluates whether the person is high, medium, or low risk, depends on the ranking, what services they're going to receive. But this, I feel, needs to be revalidated. The last time it was validated was in 2009, almost 13 or so years ago. So we need to take a look at what else can we do differently to support our clients here in Los Angeles County. Additional training is planned in the process of conducting mandatory training across adult field services in the following areas. The DRAT, that we need to be able to have an opportunity for supervisors to do overrides on the assessment, substance abuse testing, the handling of violations, case file documentation, and service referrals and tracking, so we can do a better job in tracking who goes where. We're in the process of developing and enhancing the supervisor's training because this is key. We believe the supervisor plays a key role in making sure that their staff are properly trained and that the services are provided to our clients. And improving the referral delivery system. When train our staff in service referrals, including, like I said earlier, the tracking of enrollment and service outcomes, what's working, what's not working. But most importantly, I think that we want to add is something related to contracting with community-based organizations that can help us navigate through the services and place the client as the programming that's best suited for their needs. And that's what we've done so far. And there's a lot more to come, of course.
Thank you, Chief Gonzalez, and obviously thank you, Mr. Bates. You're definitely not excused quite yet. This is going to go on for a little bit longer here, but in the meantime, Wendy, can you check and see if we have any live or public comments for this item?
I would be happy to do that. If you would like to make public comment, we don't have anyone pre-registered and we did not have any written public comment on this item. Please use the raise your hand function. Click on the little three dots or on the little hand or on your reactions button. Send a message to the host. If you're on the phone, you can dial *3. As of now, it looks like we do not have any public comment on this item. Chair Carrillo.
Okay, Wendy, I'll circle back with you before we move on, just to make sure the public has a chance to chime in if they want to. But in the meantime, commissioners, I'm looking over at the participation bracket for raised hands. If you have any questions or comments. And I see Commissioner Vice Chair Jackson.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Carrillo, and thank you all for your presentation this morning. I think I know the answer to this question, but I'm wondering if either Chief or Mr. Bates are able to share any concrete preliminary findings that are linked to the policy changes that the department has made, or is it just too soon to share that with us?
I would say it's too soon to share right now.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely once we get that going, we will bring that back.
Yeah, I think some of the issues might have been implied in the changes, but yeah, I'm looking forward to getting more information. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Meredith, you're up.
Well, I see several red flags on this, but I'm just going to address a couple things that are sticking out. One is that we had no contact since December with this individual. We sent SEO out once, but yet in June 2nd, we were notified by his mother or girlfriend that he had a gun. Did we notify outlying law enforcement agencies of that fact? Be number one question. Number two is, why did we not send SEO out at that point? The third thing I'm just going to add to this is I received a call from a couple of different members of the agency that said because of COVID, it was not uncommon for field officers not to go in the field and not to have their clients come to the office. And as a result, we may have more cases like this that have gone unchecked. So my first two questions are, did we notify other law enforcement agencies about the allegation of the gun issue, and why was SEO not sent?
Commissioner, I will handle the first question. Based on our initial review, that information was not provided to any local law enforcement agencies. But again, that may change, but as of right now, that information was not provided.
And for the SEO questions, we are still looking into why that did not occur.
Okay, I have a lot of other questions, but not in a public format at this point.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Meredith. Commissioner Garcia-Lays, you're up.
Thank you. So there's a phrase, hard facts make bad laws, meaning if you look too closely at exceptional cases rather than what is typically what happens and then base rules on that, you can often create policies that are actually not in the best interest of the day-to-day sort of operations. Now, in this case, this has received a lot of news attention. The fact that the victims were law enforcement officers has given it heightened attention. But I wonder, over the last however many years, how many people on probation have committed homicides. And I'm wondering whether or not this investigation is going to look at any of those other cases, assuming there are some, to look for patterns in what's been common over several similar incidents rather than just this one high-profile incident.
Commissioner Garcia, that is a possibility. As I said, these are initially our areas of focus, and it may lead us to other areas such as that, because there is a good chance that you are correct, but we don't know. I don't think we're opposed to looking into something that we're led to look at to see if that is an issue. So I can't say now for sure that we will be looking at that issue, but it is something that is on our radar.
If I may add, that's something that we always look at every time an incident happens and where we hear about it in the news or somewhere, we always question whether or not that's one of our clients and what can we do to address that issue. My concern, like you said, hard facts make bad laws. I don't want to get to the point where we're now violating everybody who has a first technical violation and arresting them. That's not what I want to see. I want to see something that's more sound, something that's more balanced, and those that need assistance, we can assist them. But if you change the policy and now you violate everyone for not responding to a phone call, not showing up to a meeting, or failing 1 or 2 or 3 drug tests, and you're going to arrest them for that, I think we got to be careful. And I agree. Hard facts make bad laws. So we got to make sure we do that correctly. That's why I'm very cautious right now. I want to make sure we're doing everything correctly. And we do want to take a look at other departments, not just a particular office, but other field offices as well. Oh, and the other thing, if I may add, when I was in the PD, I worked at gang unit for many, many years. And one thing that I didn't like is that we claim somebody's a gang member just because they said so, with no other validation, no other confirmation. So one thing that I want to make sure we look at is everything regarding validation, confirmation, other types, not just one occurrence, but even 3 or 4 occurrences. What is truly someone who's involved in gang activity or gang lifestyle, and how does that play a role in what we're doing? I hate to get to the point where every time someone says it's a gang member, we increase that, and now we have other issues to deal with. So I'm very careful with that.
Thank you. Commissioner Nung, you're up.
Thank you. I just wanted to, you actually answered my question, but I just want to first thank you, Chief, for laying out some of the specific actions you're taking. You actually did address a lot of the areas that I had questions about and hoped that you would be covering and addressing. I just want to emphasize how important it is that you really lean into what I'm happy to hear you say, which is being mindful about increasing technical violations. I was specifically concerned about the substance abuse testing and over surveillance and how problematic that can be. So, and needing to validate and confirm certain allegations that could really just be allegations. So wanted to appreciate that and hope that everyone listening within your department and take your leadership in really focusing on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wendy, let me circle back to you. Any chance there's any public comment for this item?
We do have one hand raised, and I know we've gone out of our normal order, but I think we can take that call if you'd like to.
Let's just keep that person on hold for a minute because I saw another hand come up. Vice Chair Jackson?
I was wondering if the families of the fallen officers have requested any kind of support from the probation department.
I reached out to the police chief the day of the incident and made myself available. The families have not reached out to probation as far as I know.
Okay. Thank you, Chief.
You know, I have a maybe technical question here about just the process and, you know, I'm not sure if this is more for Mr. Bates or if it is for Chief Gonzalez, but I guess it's for Mr. Bates. I'm just curious about any information that's being asked from the probation department, if that's being made readily available, if there's been any sort of setbacks, or we'll get back to you in a week or so on. If you don't mind, Mr. Bates, just sharing how smooth or maybe how not so smooth the process is going in your process of collecting information.
Yes, Commissioner, they've been very professional and cooperative. We are in agreement to basically meet daily if necessary regarding any information that's needed either way. So I can say at this point, there have been no major issues related to that.
Okay, it's good to know. And we've said this before, soon after the tragedy occurred, and possibly maybe members of his family are logged on today. And on behalf of the POC, and I'm gonna make a broader statement here. Our condolences once again to the fallen victims here, and it's a very tragic story and incident that occurred here, and obviously this is very serious. And I'm glad that the OIG's office is investigating, and probation is obviously making sure that if we can find a way to prevent these things in the future, that's ultimately why we're here for it. So thank you, Chief, for all those suggestions, and ultimately that will become part of the new policies. So I appreciate that. Okay, if I don't see any more hands, which I don't, well, maybe Chief or Mr. Bates, if you have any last closing comments you want to make before we move on.
I do not. I'm just looking forward to completing the investigation and being able to report back when I'm able to report back. But on a bigger picture, if you will, is transforming the adult probation services that I'm hoping we're able to do this to prevent a reoccurrence.
And of course, as I said, that's our goal as well, is to make sure this is not a systemic issue. As Commissioner Meredith alluded to, that's one of our primary goals. And we will do everything we can to prevent that.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. Okay, Wendy, I know we're out of order here with it. Normally public comments are first, but I think it's appropriate. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to unmute call-in user number 22. Your number starts with 951. You need to dial *6 on your phone to unmute yourself, I believe. There we go.
Hello, this is Janita Beauchamp. I was calling to ask the question about how, we have so many different agencies that work supposedly together. And what about LA Impact? Is that something that could help facilitate instances like this to be prevented in the future? I was under the impression that the cities that are participating in this work closely with other different agencies to prevent gang-related and things that overlap to the probation. Now, is that correct, or am I misunderstanding that part of the program? Thank you.
That's all we have for public comment. Chair Carrillo?
Okay, thank you, Wendy, and gentlemen, thanks again. We appreciate you if you log on, stay logged on. If not, we completely understand. We'll be moving on now to item number 4. We will discuss and take appropriate action on progress of the decarceration of girls in Los Angeles County as outlined in December 1st, 2021 motion by the Board of Supervisors, which, as you can see, is attached in the agenda. Wendy, please proceed with this item.
Yes, thank you. I'm very happy to be able to talk about this item since the Probation Oversight Commission was specifically instructed to be part of the report back process, and also because Commissioner Dupuy and I have had the opportunity to serve on the facilitation team for the gender responsive work with the Youth Justice Work Group, which has brought up a lot of needs and issues and challenges with respect to decarceration of girls and gender expansive youth. I'm really happy that Luis Rodriguez from the Public Defender's Office and Elizabeth Lopez from DYD, that may be a new title that you hear since she's now officially with the Department of Youth Development, are here to talk about the experiences. It has been a long time getting started, both in terms of receiving data and information and launching the transitional multidisciplinary teams meetings, but those things are all well in process now, which I'm happy to report. So with that, I think I'll explain that there are 2 basic directives on this, and one of those is being led by the Public Defender's Office. And so I think it's best to start with Luis with his report on the process, and then we'll turn it over to Elizabeth with support from Commissioner Dupuy on the Youth Justice Work Group progress.
Thank you, Wendy. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for this opportunity and the invitation, Wendy. And as Wendy indicated, Wendy, along with Elizabeth, along with Commissioner Dupuy, we've been overlapping, working together on making this board motion ongoing reality. I can report to you very positive things. We've been capturing information as far as number of girls, young women participating. I can tell you that actually the majority of the girls, young women who come into the system are being released at arraignment or not being detained, which is great. Of those who are detained, the great majority of them are taking advantage of the TMDTs. Some, for strategic or other reasons, are choosing not to participate. Obviously, we can't disclose the reasons that they're not doing that because it has to do with the defense of their case. But I would characterize it as a very small percentage of the youth who do not want to participate. If they don't, it's because they've got other issues going on that we need to take care of in the meantime. But what I can share with you in general right now, but let me tell you this, I'm gathering information that was requested by Dr. Mariscal from the Burns Institute that anonymizes the youth, but provides at least demographic information with regards to who has participated. As soon as I put that together, not only will I share it with her, but I'll pass it on to Wendy as well, so she may share it with all of you commissioners. And I think you'll see that I feel very positive about the whole thing. You know, we had a hard time starting up because it was a somewhat of a new process. We had to establish protocol, and I can report to you that the probation department has been extremely helpful in making sure that we have the facilities, that we have access to Wi-Fi, that the folks who they're sending to these TMDTs are folks who believe in rehabilitation and collaborative justice. It's been very positive. One hitch at times, which we've dealt with, is when we make the presentation in court and we have to remind people who are caring of the youth that sometimes the ego has to be checked at the door, and it's not about them, but it's about the youth and making sure that we're all in step with that. And again, you know, at the end of the day, it's up to the court to agree or disagree. I can tell you that we've not had one situation yet where the court has turned down our recommendation with regards to the TMDT release report. The one thing that I want to point out, and that I've said before, we've had a couple of detractors who see this as an equal protection issue, and so I can get away from the legalese. That means that we're only treating a certain group of individuals and giving them preference, and here specifically gender or gender responsiveness, and we're excluding boys or males, or we're excluding certain races. So the focus right now is that we're giving special treatment to girls, young women. As we've said in the beginning, this is a pilot project, and it's all of our intention to expand it to all youth who are detained and to be able to provide this tool to de-incarcerate all youth. The beginning, as stated by the Board of Supervisors, was to concentrate on girls and young women. And that's what we're doing. And I hope that hopefully by the end of the year, it will no longer be a pilot, and it's something that we can incorporate for all youth. And hopefully that will, the way it will dovetail into us is working with the YES teams, which I know Elizabeth will talk about at some point, but there'll be another phase where we interface with the ongoing efforts to lessen that streamline into the juvenile justice system. So anyway, that's my brief report. I open it up for any questions or comments from the commissioners that you may have.
Thank you, Louise. Before I pass it over to Elizabeth, I think I'll share just a little bit of the demographic information that we've received for the public to understand the scope of what we're talking about. As many of you know, we've seen a really dramatic reduction in the overall population of incarcerated youth in Los Angeles County over the past few years. And that includes girls and gender expansive youth who are incarcerated. As of yesterday's numbers, we're looking at about 33 girls who are identified as girls because the probation incarceration system is divided in a binary system of boys and girls. So you have some young people who identify as LGBTQIA or transgender in both of the girls and boys units, but they're at this point identified as girls and boys. So 33 girls who are at Central Juvenile Hall. Most of those are predisposition, meaning that they are awaiting the decision about whether they would be put into placement or put into camp or potentially into secure track at this point, or be released to home of parent or another placement. And then 9 girls who are in a post-disposition setting. So most of them are at Dorothy Kirby Center. They're actually all physically at Dorothy Kirby Center, but some of them are placed at Dorothy Kirby Center and some of them are placed at Camp Scott, which is located physically at Dorothy Kirby Center. So it's actually a fairly small number of girls and young women, although there are some really interesting characteristics, like not surprisingly and reflective also of boys and young men in the system. Black girls are profoundly overrepresented in terms of their population in Los Angeles County as compared to their population among incarcerated girls. And also we have learned that there is a higher rate of crossover between the dependency system, the child welfare system, and youth who are identified as commercially sexually exploited, CSEC. So lots of challenges in terms of understanding why the board chose to start with girls and gender expansive youth. And I think with that, I'll pass it to Elizabeth, who can explain some of the deep work that the Youth Justice Work Group has been examining in terms of how to reduce the population now and in the future.
Sorry to interrupt you. Forgive me, Elizabeth, but Wendy brought up 2 very important points, which are the CSEC girls, young women are part of this group. Those are some of the ones who are given high priority. And the other one that I'm excited to talk about, it's not on the agenda today, is the beginning of the dual status court, which is headed by Judge Kemi Adequaci, and Commissioner Trung will be the presiding judge. And for those of you who are not familiar with that, these are the youth who have a dependency case and a delinquency case. So we're excited to say that we're actively participating in starting that up at the beginning of September or mid-September. So sorry, Wendy. Sorry, Liz.
Thanks, Wendy. Thanks, Louise. Hello, commissioners. My name is Elizabeth Lopez. I am a program manager with the Department of Youth Development. And today I'll be sharing some updates on our progress and challenges in regards to the gender responsive decarceration efforts, as well as the motion that's been referenced today. So just quickly in response, in terms of our response of the motion, the DYD, in collaboration with the Youth Justice Advisory Groups, Youth Development Network, and advisory groups, as well as other relevant stakeholders and county departments, were directed to provide an initial report back to the Board of Supervisors with recommendations and a specific implementation plan focusing on the decarceration of girls and young women in probation camps and halls. There was an initial report back that was submitted to the board in March of 2022, which introduced a new gender responsive work group to the larger Youth Justice Advisory Group. This report back also outlined the data request that was submitted to probation. Today, data was shared. The initial data we just received, and so we're digging through that and interpreting that. And this report back in March also included or presented a plan for developing actionable reforms. Since then, we have developed another report back that provides the implementation planning that has occurred between March and June to reduce the trajectory of girls and gender expansive youth into detention, ultimately working towards 0 girls and gender expansive youth in detention. It's become clear to us, though, that at this stage in the planning process, this will be an ongoing and phased implementation. So therefore, our most recent report back includes updates on the following components of this phased implementation. Our end goal is to have a fuller or more complete implementation plan by the end of the fall or end of November. The different components for the phased implementation includes the data request, access, and also information around the challenges that we experience. But like I mentioned today, we are beginning to receive updates on that initial data request. as well as a breakdown of our work group convenings and progress, our plans for youth and family engagement, as well as stakeholder and system engagement, which you've already heard snippets about how that's going. And we also included in this report back initial recommendations and budgetary considerations, specifically to be explored by DYD. We've developed an initial plan for implementation with those set of recommendations that we're exploring. Additionally, the work group, along with community partners, will be hosting youth focused groups where we hope to learn from young people directly impacted by the justice system, and really to take from their input to best inform the ongoing development of the implementation and set recommendations for implementation. Efforts have also expanded to include forthcoming engagement with juvenile judges, as well as ongoing engagement with the Public Defender's Office and other defender offices, DCFS, and the DA's office. This will allow us to consult and coordinate efforts for decarceration, just like it was mentioned earlier, ensuring that we're aligning the call for action as laid out in Directive 1 and Directive 2 of the motion for the decarceration of girls and gender expansive youth, and that we're doing so in a collaborative way. Like it was shared earlier, I as a representative of YDD, I participated in the development of the TMDT protocol and currently also engage when TMDTs are actually being scheduled. Our goal is to ensure that we are connecting more members of our gender responsive work group to potentially participate and support with resources and services in any TMDTs that we're called upon. Just to share a bit on challenges, like it was mentioned, there were some delays and challenges in terms of receiving data that was requested from probation. But I believe Wendy and I've shared a bit more about the most recent updates that we received. And I think another thing too that has recently really supported us is just coordinating updates and coordinating efforts with the Public Defender's Office to expand what kind of service providers can participate in these TMDTs and the coordination of that space and the participants that are there. Just to speak a little bit on some of the initial recommendations, I think that folks might be interested in hearing about. We're looking really to explore within DYD how we can expand our diversion network and integrate a gender responsive lens first to the work that we're continuing to stand up and expand on, and aligning along with other initial programs that are planned for launch as we continue to transition and build out the department. Those initial programs include youth development regions or youth development networks, to the 24-hour youth centers, which are currently in more of a planning phase, the ongoing program implementation and potential expansion with the support of CFCI dollars of Impact Justice's California Justice Leaders Program. It's a reentry navigation program. And then identifying resources and supports to provide aid to young people around urgent needs, transportation needs, housing, safety. And then two other items that are also in planning phases are YES teams and implementing the credible messenger model. Those are all of my updates. I'm open to answer any questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Dupuy, did you want to add anything?
Really thorough, Elizabeth. I appreciate it. I think I would just add that I'm really grateful that probation was able to provide us some of the placement data and some of the demographic and risk score data for the girls and gender expansive youth. I mean, it's just of such importance to us actually achieving the goals of the motion. So I did want to express gratitude for that information, and also hope that we can initiate something on a more consistent basis so that we can continue meeting the goals of the motion in collaboration with probation. So just again, wanted to thank especially Chief Deputy Fletcher as well for helping with that. There are some things that I think are still outstanding in regards to the data that would be excellent, like I said before, to kind of get a grasp on. If anyone like takes a little bit of time to read the motion, there are some data points outlined in there that the motion encourages the CIO's office and probation to collaborate with us on to provide so that we can meet these goals. One of those that is not necessarily included but would be helpful to know is the SOGI status, or the sexual orientation and gender identity expression data on the youth or gender expansive young people that are currently incarcerated. Also, for like the information on the charges as well. And just to back up and give a bigger picture is that if we're trying to get to 0 girls in detention and we're charged with developing an implementation plan, it's really helpful to understand where we need to plug in different needs for the girls, and that is dependent on the data. So for example, if they're reside in certain communities, how can they be linked to resources in their communities? And that's also part of, I know, what TMDTs are tasked with. We are also tasked with looking at the quality of placements and eligibility criteria. And just thinking of, as girls that are become eligible for release might be hitting 18, and where can they actually go? What is the length of time it takes to get them there? Or is there challenges that we can help address? I mean, these are all the things that the data helps us speak to. So I'm just, again, really grateful. It's going to really help us move this train forward to continue getting that data and to even work with the data that we've gotten thus far. And just also want to thank Luis and his team for the collaboration and the willingness to also share information to get this work done. I have a couple of specific requests when it comes to this particular topic, and I don't know if it's now is an appropriate time to bring that up, or if I should wait until public comment.
Chair Carrillo, it's up to you, but I think maybe we should do public comment just so we keep things in the order we've generally done them.
Yep, that sounds good to me.
Okay, so I will just say in closure, thank you everyone very much for coming. I continue to be really involved and interested in this work. Also, Dr. Reynoso and Jennifer Ochoa Garcia are involved with me. And I just want to make one plug. That's something that I've heard over the past few months of working in this, since we have 150 people on the call today, which is that in the County of Los Angeles, there is a number of resource families, which is the new term that we're used for foster families, that are willing to provide housing for young women who in particular have been involved in human trafficking or CSEC, commercial sexual exploitation of children. We have heard that there is a number that looks like 5 families, home-based families that are interested in doing so. And so while this is beyond the scope of the motion, I think it would be very appropriate for us to say that if there are folks out there who would like to consider serving as resource families to provide a family setting for some of the young women and gender expansive youth who are in these facilities, we could make a huge impact on that by getting you to find out more about the process. And I can guarantee you that our colleagues at DCFS will jump on your interest and get you into a training program. So feel free to send a message to Janae in the chat if you're interested. And with that, I will turn it back to you, Chair Carrillo, or go straight to public comment.
Thank you, Wendy. Let me just pass it right back to you and ask if there's any written or live public comment for this item.
Thank you. We do not have any written public comment. I see one hand up, which I'll call on shortly. If there's anyone else who would like to make public comment, please click on the 3 dots, raise your hand, or on the reactions button, or if you're calling in, dial *3. And we'll start, I think that's Danita, call-in user number 22. We're going to unmute you, Danita, and get you started. Okay, we can hear you.
Okay, I would like to thank everybody for the presentation. The information as provided has been extensive and very eye-opening. And I really don't have a comment, I just have a question. Is there any statistical data that has been kept for the numbers of female youth or people that identify as female compared with the district attorneys? Because as we know, George Gascon is in favor of social justice reform and decriminalization. And if if he is recalled or when his time comes, if he does not win re-election, we'll have another district attorney and their point of view or perspective may change. And so I wanted to know if there's any data compared to, let's say, when Jackie Lacey was there or even prior district attorneys compared to now with George Gascon. And how does that factor into future numbers for housing and appropriations for the women? Thank you.
Okay, the next public comment is coming from Ricardo Ortega. Ricardo, we're going to unmute you and then you may have to unmute yourself as well. Okay, it looks like we can
hear me.
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Ricardo Ortega. I am from the LA County Youth Commission. I am happy to see the work that you guys are doing and the professionalism here and very interesting questions and thoughts. I just wanted to kind of say hi from a fellow commissioner, a sister commission, and I am here. However I can help, please feel free to reach out to me. I know we're sharing some staff members together, so thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Ortega. Welcome. We're glad to have you here. That's the end of the public comment that I see signed up. Chair Carrillo, I don't know. I think probably Luis would be best equipped to answer Danita's question if you'd like to give him the opportunity to do so.
Absolutely. Luis?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Wendy. To answer, it definitely will have an effect if Mr. Gascon is recalled. There were a number of policies that he brought to life that not only impact girls or gender expansive youth, but all youth. One of them is the filing of strikes, the filing of multiple charges for the same offense, transferring youth to adult court. Some of those policies have changed a bit, which have negatively impacted youth. But to a certain degree, they're better than they were before. Of course, our concern on the defense side, not just defense, but I think folks who care about the youth, is that those things will change because, and I'm just basing it on a prior meeting where the representatives from the district attorney's office, their characterization, first of all, is that there's been an increase in filings, almost 300% in the last 6 months in comparison to last year, and that a majority of those are violent offenses. Now, I can't argue with the numbers. I can argue with the characterization, certainly, but when folks are already putting that idea out there that there's a lot of violence going on, these policies are way too liberal, and it's only getting worse, my position is, well, we've had very rigid policies in the past that were not responsive to youth, and that didn't solve things. Okay, because if that was that simple, we wouldn't be having these discussions. We're doing something extremely difficult, which is we're giving people a chance, which shouldn't be difficult. We're giving youth a chance. We're thinking outside of that box. So the short answer is those policies will have a negative effect if Mr. Gascon is recalled, but not just as to girls and gender expansive youth, but all youth. That's my concern. And I know we'll talk about this a little bit in the next agenda item, but yes, the answer is yes.
Thank you, Luis. Appreciate that. Moving on now to the commissioners for questions and comments. And I see Vice Chair Jackson, you're up.
Yep, I've got my hand up. Thanks, Commissioner Carrillo, and thank you, presenters. It sounds like a number of things are still in a planning phase, but it's always good to hear that there's been some meaningful progress in some other ways. Mr. Rodriguez, you mentioned earlier that majority of the girls are being released, and part of my thinking is always that, you know, any contact with the court should lead to a better outcome when our youth are interacting with the system, right? And so I'm just wondering, when those young women, when those youth are released, are they being connected to any resources? Like, what kind of communities are already in place once they're released, if any?
The answer is yes. And I can only speak to the clients that we represent. And just as a reminder, the youth are represented by actually 4 entities, if I could break it down. It's the Public Defender's Office, the Alternate Public Defender's Office, Independent Juvenile Defense Program, which is Mr. Yamashiro is in charge of the big program, and then private attorneys. I can speak for the folks who I've spoken to, and definitely folks who we represent, is yes, we will always look to see what kind of support we can provide for the youth, regardless of gender. And we understand that when somebody comes in contact with this system, it's simply releasing them is not going to keep them out of custody. As you all know, sometimes it's very difficult. They don't have the home life that they need. And as Wendy indicated, when you talk about options, housing options, they're very limited. But yes, that is a continued commitment. And I dare speak for the other defenders as well. That's to the benefit of everybody, because it makes it easier for us when we go into court and argue to the judge, or if we decide to fight the charge, that this youth should not be caged.
Right. Well, it feels, especially with this being a pilot program, it feels important to really be able to demonstrate any kind of success at whatever stage in the process. Has that been captured at all by any of the parties involved?
Well, as you may be aware, once a youth is under the worship of the court, it's a continuing relationship, right? Until they age out, so to speak. So it's a there's no, I can't give you like in comparison to adults, it's they plead guilty, they're sentenced, that's pretty much the end. Here it's a continuing effort to make sure how they're progressing. Now, anecdotally, I can tell you that we track their progress because when they violate probation, we're obviously informed immediately. But what we're seeing is that when we have this intervention, that recidivism rate does drop. And that's anecdotally. We're just starting to collect information when it comes to TMDTs. And hopefully in a few months, we'll have that hard data. I know some folks are guided by data, but I can tell you that in reviewing information that we receive from our attorneys and having conversations with the folks on the front lines and with judges, they're seeing a positive impact.
Thank you for that.
Commissioner Dupuy, you're up.
Thank you. Actually, Luis, I had a couple questions. I might have missed this too. How many TMDTs how many let me rephrase this. How many young girls and gender expansive youth have gone home as a result of the TMDT process to date? I know we got like a little bit of a late start, but just curious about those numbers.
The numbers that I have internally right now, this is just as of the last 2 months, I can count 7 as a result of the TMDTs.
Wonderful.
But remember, there's also MDTs that are being conducted by probation, and which are separate from the TMDTs, and those also result in the youth going home. With those, I don't have the exact number, but with us and just the Public Defender's Office, just in the last couple of months, 7.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. And as I'm wearing, kind of 2 hats in this whole space, wanted to actually, my next line of questions are for probation in particular, because it was a rocky start trying to fulfill from my perspective, it was a bit of a rocky start trying to address all of the charges of the motion. And one thing that I've noticed is we are trying to get more synergy between all the entities that have been asked to do different things, right? So some groups, we've recently been meeting more with the public defenders to try to align the work that we're doing. And also there's other departments named in the motion, such as probation, that I think we could really benefit from having a more direct collaboration with on this. And to that end, I wanted to see if it were possible or and like explore the idea of maybe having a dedicated person from probation to communicate with, to work with around some of these charges of the motion to see if we can explore that possibility. That's just like really a yes or no question for whomever from probation can speak to that.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yeah, absolutely. We would be happy to do that. Currently, Director Joanne Para, who has experience in the unit for CSEC youth, is the director at Central Juvenile Hall who has taken the lead on kind of organizing and orchestrating and working on really the scheduling with the Public Defender's Office and other defense counsel. So she is a great resource. You know, that's on top of what she's doing in Central Juvenile Hall. So if we want to identify someone else, I'm happy to do that. As you know, we have brought in Young Women's Freedom Center and trying to wrap some of their services in as well. So they've been great partners, and Director Para has been the lead on that as well. So happy to look into that more and see if we need to identify someone more specific.
Okay, that would be great, and I can reach out to Joanna as well, because I wonder like how much communication with the probation department that might be involved in ancillary aspects of this effort, how knowledgeable they are also about the motion. And like, again, I think maybe following up with either you or Joanne might be helpful to think about a communication strategy with probation staff around the motion, just to bring everyone on the same page, help things flow a little bit better if that hasn't already been done. Again, I'm not sure about that. So thank you. I guess my second question is it about a data add-on, a data request add-on? Again, I'm really appreciative of what we've been provided to date and think that there is one easy low-hanging fruit piece of information that would really help us again achieve these charges of the motion. And there is an intake and detention log that I've been made aware of, and I know it might have some personal information on it that, like, of course, everything can be redacted that would be identifying, but think that that would be really helpful for this particular effort as well, and wanted to see who we might follow up with, because I don't think we have an executed MOU yet, right? Is that the case with the data, right? So maybe who we can follow up while that's still being sorted out, to check into the availability of that.
I'd be happy to do that, and we can connect with County Council and to see what we can provide. Absolutely.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Commissioner Nunn, you're up.
Hi, thank you. I just have one question. I'm not quite sure who can answer it, so it might be probation, but I was looking at some data that we received that people have been referencing that hopefully will be shared out later, but it sort of lists the sort of some of the demographic data for the young people incarcerated in Central and Dorothy Kirby and Scott, and it lists the LADS score for the Los Angeles Detention Screener scores, and they range, it looks like, from anywhere from 0 to 9. I just wanted to see if someone could explain a little bit more that screening and specifically the scores, because just based on my past experience with risk assessment instruments, higher tends to be leaning towards detention recommendations, low would be not and towards release. So I've seen some zeros, a number of 1s and 2s and even 3s. So just wondering if someone could give a little bit more detail and explanation for that.
Yeah, I'm happy to kind of give you just the general overview, and certainly we can maybe even offline talk about the specific behind the scoring. So I'm certainly not an expert in that at this point. So this really is a tool that's intended to screen for recommendation of immediate detention. And so it looks at areas of age of first arrest, number of prior arrests, those kinds of things, right, that are static in many situations. And so there is quite a formula to calculate out those scores. We have kind of the legend, if you will, right, that talks about how to score that I'd be happy to share as well. So we can come back maybe at another meeting and talk specifically, or happy to talk offline as well, so that everyone really understands how that score is calculated and what determines release and what doesn't.
Great, thank you. I didn't know if any of the other panelists or anyone had any additional information or interpretation of those numbers or concerns about them.
I share your concern, Commissioner. So I'd love to get more feedback, background information on that.
Thank you.
I would agree. And I think probably like a better understanding of what scores prompts what action, right? Just like you mentioned about the range from 0 to 9, that would be really helpful to just kind of help inform maybe like what kind of, either if it's interventions, like, so we're focusing about or on interventions or pathways to provide additional support, right, or alternatives. So I think that could really help inform what we're working on.
Agreed. Happy to have that conversation.
Awesome, thank you. And I'm just gonna, there is, I know, an amazing group of people working on this, including Commissioner Dupuy. So I'm gonna trust that maybe that conversation we can follow up with it, but I'm trusting the group is gonna follow up on this ask, but happy to follow up if needed to support in any way. Thanks.
Okay, seeing no more hands up, I think this conversation has wrapped for today. Thank you, panelists. Good seeing you guys. I really appreciate the work you're doing. For our next item, we have a panelist who's running a little bit late, so I'm going to move, instead of going to 5, I'm going to go to 6 and then back to 5 after she arrives. So moving on to item number 6 for now, we will hear updates from Executive Director Wendy Julian on the POC's progress towards completing its 2022 strategic goals outlined in the POC's 2022 strategic operating plan. Wendy, please share your updates.
Thank you, Chair Carrillo. And in her defense, I actually told her to come later because for those of you who pay close attention to our meetings, we very rarely run early on time. So I thank you for switching this around so that we can have a full panel for item number 5. So I'm very happy to be reporting on this. I had a great meeting this morning with my colleague, Jennifer Ochoa Garcia, who's our staff analyst. And she has been tracking the progress on the strategic plan. So we created a strategic plan with all of the commissioners at the end of last year that was for the calendar year 2022. It involves putting the 98 reform priorities into 4 buckets that are the subcommittees. So it's facilities, conditions and closure, training, personnel management, programs and services, and data and research. All of the 98 reform priorities fit squarely into one of those buckets, except one big area, which is around budget, which we have treated differently because it sort of is incorporated in all of those 4 buckets. So what Jennifer has been doing is tracking our progress, both on the specific benchmarks and goals of the strategic plan, as well as how those correlate to the 98 reform priorities. And amazingly, she has reported that we are actively working and or the department is actively working on meeting 40 of the 98 priorities. So that doesn't mean that they're complete, certainly not, but it does speak a lot to the work that the commissioners have done and that the staff have done and that the department has done over the last year and a half to move towards those reform priorities. So some of the specific things that we have been working on and where I think we've shown the value of the 9 commissioners' work over the last year and a half is on inspections. So as you all know, Dr. Reynoso runs the inspections and they are all conducted by commissioners on site at the open facilities where youth are incarcerated. It's actually required by state law that we conduct inspections. We did 2 pre-inspections that were in addition to the legally required ones at Kilpatrick and Central, just given the physical needs at Central and the opportunity to move the SYTF population to Kilpatrick. But Dr. Reynoso has now launched the official 2022 inspection season. I was there with a number of the commissioners on Friday at Camp South Bond Page last Friday. So those inspections were completed, and the reports will be released to the public and probation soon. The team also completed inspections at Dorothy Kirby Center and Camp Scott. So we're halfway through the facilities. We had an inspection scheduled at Camp Rocky, but unfortunately the camp has been under extended quarantine. And so in an effort not to bring any additional COVID into the facility, we stayed out and are rescheduling that inspection shortly. We also in August have the big ones, the site inspections at Barry J. Nydorf and Central Juvenile Hall. We've done a few things differently this year with inspections, partially based on what we learned ourselves and partially what the board asked us to do. So we immediately report after the inspection on any health and safety or health and welfare concerns to the department. And, for example, there were a couple of things, nothing major on Friday that we learned of. And Dr. Reynoso sent a letter to Deputy Chief Fletcher. She responded immediately and are looking into it. So that actually feels significantly better than the way the inspection process worked last year. And I appreciate that learning process. The other thing is that we will be sharing the reports with the public and the board as they come out instead of waiting until December when we've completed all of them. So you'll be seeing the Kirby and Scott report soon. I am happy to answer any questions that you have about inspections. I will say that I know we've said this over and over again, but I think it's worth repeating. The Probation Oversight Commission is not the BSCC. We're not the state. We're not supposed to be determining whether the department is in compliance with Title 15. There are some members of our commission who are very well versed in Title 15, at least one who helped write portions of Title 15. There are people who know very much about what the law is. But the purpose of the POC inspections is both to have another set of eyes on the facilities in addition to the BSCC, and to approach it from a much more civilian oversight perspective. So Lisa Southwell from BSCC very clearly says our job is to go in there and explain how we would feel if our own children were in the facility. So the perspective and how you see the reports written is slightly different from the way the BSCC reports go down. And also you'll see recommendations and things commented on that have nothing to do with Title 15 and have everything to do with things that we heard from interviews with staff and youth. So I'm very proud of the work that we're doing on the inspections process. I think it's one of the most significant additions that the POC has brought to probation reform in the county. Another project that we're working very much on is programs and services. So we'll talk about this more in the agenda item number 5 when we discuss the secure youth track facilities, but also programs and services at all of the facilities and in the field. So Chief Gonzalez mentioned at the beginning, thinking about the opportunities for reform in adult field services, and both in adult field services and youth field services, a big part of the work is on referrals to appropriate agencies that offer substance use counseling and offer housing opportunities and job training and recreational activities when we're talking about kids, things to get involved in. And then certainly when a youth is incarcerated, probation is entirely responsible in their partnership with LACO for the programs and services offered to them, since they're 24 hours a day. So we've done a couple of things. Probation has done a great job of sharing with us their inventory of programs in the facilities. Our next step is to get an inventory of those programs in the field, although we have received a detailed report on contracts, which is part of it. So a lot of the programs and services are offered through contracts with probation or other county entities, but some are offered through other funding sources, so they don't have to be in contract with the department. We're doing a couple of things with those. So we're looking into best practices. We're meeting with community-based organizations around the community that provide services, and then referring them to appropriate folks at probation with whom they might be connected. We're ensuring that the programs that are listed, for example, on a calendar at the facility are actually taking place on the day that we go and do the inspection. So a little quality control and auditing. And in general, eventually, the job of the Probation Oversight Commission, and specifically Dr. Reynoso, will be to make recommendations around best practices and actually help with research about how the programs result in positive outcomes. So that actually relates directly to my last point, which is around data and the data dashboard. So it's many of the PRIT recommendations and the recommendations around the creation of the POC relate to transparency and accountability for the department. Data in particular has been a big challenge for the department, which they speak quite candidly about. And we are looking at how we can be supportive in this arena. So Sarah, Dr. Gongora is currently working with the executive office on a really exciting update to our website, along with Ismail Chinchi, our community information officer, so that we can provide better information to the public through our website. Probation has been sharing lots of data with us, which we are in some cases transferring into a more shareable format, and in some cases sharing directly in the format that probation shares it. And until probation is able to get their data dashboard up and running, which is actually in progress, I'm happy to report, the POC will continue to report that data directly to the public. So we have reached an agreement on the memorandum of understanding around data sharing, and are just going through the last administrative processes on those. But I really just am feeling excited about the future of the strategic planning. It's about time to start thinking about what our goals are for 2023. And so Commissioner Jackson is the lead of that subcommittee, and we will be meeting shortly to take some good notes about what we have accomplished and what we haven't on the plan for this year, and then add a lot more things onto the plan for next year. So with that, Chair Carrillo, that's the end of my report.
Thank you so much, Wendy. And actually, going right back to you, do you have any live or written or live public comment to this item?
Janae, I haven't been paying close attention, but I don't see any written public comment. If you'd like to make a live public comment, you can use the raise your hand function or click on the three dots. Don't see anybody.
Thank you, Wendy. Commissioners, comments, questions? Vice Chair Jackson?
I mean, I have a really quick comment. I feel like Wendy gave a very thorough update, and so she spared me having to really debrief what's happening with strategic planning. But I will say, and what I is that we use our strategic plan as an accountability tool, both internally and externally. And so to that extent, we take the updating of it very seriously. And so I'm looking forward to our next meeting to basically see where we are and where we need to go. So thanks.
Thank you, Vice Chair. While I wait for any other hands to come up, as always, Wendy, thank you so much. You and the team obviously do a great job, and your reports are always on point. And as Vice Chair Jackson stressed just now, that you leave no air for, or sort of like leave everyone sort of speechless after you've given reports, because you cover every single thing. So I really appreciate that. And I see no other hands. Can you check, Wendy, if Patricia's?
She is. Janae, Patricia is actually on the attendee list. If you can elevate her to panelist, great. We're good to go.
Okie dokie, moving on to back to 5. For item number 5, we will discuss and take possible action on progress the Los Angeles County Probation Department has made regarding site selection and programming for youth disposition to the secure track. First, Chief Deputy Bettina will provide updates, followed by Ms. Sung on this topic. Adam, there you are. Please proceed. Good to see you.
Good to see you as well, Chair Carrillo. Thank you so much. Chief Deputy Fletcher's here as well, just in case there's some added information. So I think the two real substantive updates for folks have to do one with Camp Scott and the other Campus Kilpatrick. I'll just share really briefly that we are still going through conversations with labor regarding move to Campus Kilpatrick and staffing. So we have a special recruitment notice. Recall that it is all of our desire to recruit specific staff to work with these young, as of now, young men. So we're still having those conversations with labor and specifically working through employee relations at CEO to try to carve out as much as we can in those conversations, hoping to have a meeting scheduled very soon, and hopefully that meeting will bear some fruit. So that's the update there. And then the larger update really is around Camp Scott and what the board asked us to do on March 15th. So as you'll recall, there was a motion on March 15th where the board asked us to do a couple of things, specifically around site selection. Because the committee had narrowed the potential facilities down, we did a deeper dive at Camp Scott, which was one of the facilities that was selected. And so we engaged DLR, who's the architect who most of you know. I think he's actually presented to this body at some point, maybe Andy Couples, maybe not. Some of the public meetings blur together. He did design Campus Kilpatrick, and he's well known to the county. He's done a lot of work around the country, and really he's a visionary around building transformative spaces for young people. So we've seen a lot of what he's been able to do in outside of DC and some other places that are really exceptional. And so we've been engaging with him as well on the feasibility study around Central Juvenile Hall. But he did a deeper dive at Camp Scott and came back with some potential ideas and renderings. It really is a study of the site and to give us all an understanding of what it will take to build something that is in fact transformational. As folks will know, and many of you have been to Camp Scott at some point, it was built in like 1959, and has undergone very little upgrade over the years. I think we've done, general maintenance, and there's been some structures added to the facility, but things like the dorm and the classrooms and things like that are in a, it's just an old state. I think, it's the old model. So the living unit's barracks style. It's open. It's not conducive to the direction we want to be moving with the LA model. And so just really quickly, and I'll step aside for Ms. Song here, but really quickly, what has been proposed is to transform the living unit to create smaller group model. So individual, basically 4 quadrants within the existing structure, but sort of gutting that space and creating something that's much more home-like. Each of those quadrants would have its own living space on the unit. There's offices for support staff, both probation, community-based organizations, clinicians, whomever else is going to be working with this population would have space there on the units. New restrooms, of course, all of that would need to be upgraded significantly. The dining hall and the kitchen would need some upgrade. The classroom space, vocational training space would need some upgrades. There is currently no real visiting space. The administrative office and building, sort of the out-facing part, is pretty rough as you pull up to the space. And so the renderings transform all of that as well. So it's a really comprehensive renovation to that facility. It would not resemble the current structure at all, in fact. And I think it was really promising to see not only what's possible at Camp Scott, but what may be possible at some of the few other facilities that we're going to maintain moving forward. So it's a positive study, I think. Now for here's the large but, unfortunately. So the cost is somewhere between $30 and $40 million. The low end is for those dorms, the dorm setting that I explained. The high number would be if we decided to go with individual rooms. And as we've shared, the more we talk to young people, there seems to be some desire to have individual rooms. Some may opt for a dorm or an open setting. So we'd like to provide options if possible. And then the timeline. The timeline is really problematic, to say the least. So the time frame, we're looking at about 50 months. A big part of that time frame before we ever put a shovel in the ground is the environmental impact. I can't get too into that part of it just because there's some pending litigation associated with environmental impact at the site that folks are aware of. I know I've shared with this body. So that's part of the struggle is navigating the environmental component of this in order to get to a place where we can actually start to do some of the renovation. So at this point, just in terms of next steps, the idea would be to have another conversation at the JJRBG subcommittee. We're going to draft our response to the board, at least on these sections, and then share that in the subcommittee so that the subcommittee can really weigh in, because what's being asked of the department is to report back on the subcommittee's recommendation around this site now that we've gained a little bit more information. So that's kind of the big update around Camp Scott. And Ms. Song, I don't know what I left out, but nice to see you. Glad that you're here with us.
Thank you, Mr. Bettino, and good afternoon, commissioners. Happy to be here. I think I mostly want to be responsive to whatever questions the commission has, and will just offer up, I think, the number of concerns that JJRBG members like myself have expressed, and in a role similar maybe to this commission. I see my colleague, Mr. Rodriguez from the Public Defender's Office is here too, so I'll let him chime in around the JJRB discussion and the nature of it. But we, like you, are typically in a position of asking questions, trying to get information in order to make recommendations or proposals that are well informed. We're also there to hear from the community, engage them, share the information that we have to also further both decision making, or really we're not a decision making body, we're an advisory body, and then to monitor implementation, to push implementation. So in that vein, we are of course frustrated by the zero move of any young people out of Barry J. It has been a resounding, I think, consensus among many bodies, not just ours, that Barry J. Juvenile Hall is not a place for young people to serve long-term commitments. Second, and part of that is asking our own body, as well as this body, what else can we do to provide support to the probation department, to urge the Board of Supervisors to lend whatever support is needed to get young people out in phases and in a way that's safe and allows probation to be prepared on the receiving end. The second is with the new information about Camp Scott, its timeline and its cost. Of course, we are looking at the math and realizing with or without Camp Scott, there is a need to look at facilities beyond Kilpatrick and Scott, right? And so how do we expand the conversation, reconsider some facilities we may have taken off the table? I know members of this body have mentioned Los Padrinos. We have too. And so how do we unearth information in order to consider that even before we necessarily make a better informed decision or proposal around it? And I think that's really brings me to the last sort of set of lessons learned, maybe is the better way to frame it going forward, is that in order to think about facility preparation and facility selection and think about engaging localities in the broader community in this discussion, we really need to make sure that we gather sufficient information, right? So when we discussed Camp Scott, it was based on certain assumptions about its readiness and its timeline. We didn't have a lot of information about cost. And then we find ourselves, you know, not necessarily scrambling, although maybe scrambling is the right word because we're 2 years into this conversation in a sense, at least for the JJRBG, a year and a half into this conversation. But we really need to figure out, right, in a collaborative way, how to shore up enough information, share that with the broader public so that we can hear feedback on that in order to not then have to revisit those decisions or directions repeatedly. Because in the meantime, young people are, in my mind, in unsafe conditions, unsupported to the extent that we would like them to be supported, and the staffing challenges in and outside of the secure youth treatment facility context are very alarming, right? So on top of really getting young people out of Kilpatrick, thinking about what the probation department needs in terms of support to do that, thinking about other facilities to reconsider, thinking about information gathering in a way that's timely and more comprehensive. I do think we need to think about, if we're thinking about another facility like Los Padrinos, to also apply the other planning that we've had in place for places like Kilpatrick, including credible messenger staffing, co-staffing in those places, including thinking about programming that needs to get up and running. So I think I'll leave it at that and welcome questions and pass it over to, I don't know if we're passing it over to, I'm not in charge of the agenda, but I see Luis, you're here as well.
Luis, I would love for you to chime in if you don't mind.
No, not at all. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Patricia. Yes, strong, firmly yes as to what my colleague Patricia said. And Adam has been doing a great job in leading us in these discussions. And I want to point out that at a prior POC meeting, Commissioner Lewis brought up the fact that why aren't we considering Los Padrinos? And so we had that discussion at our last subcommittee meeting. And that has to be a viable option for consideration because, as it's been pointed out by many of us here, we have a large number of folks from DJJ who are coming back to LA County, and not all of them are going to parole out. That's going to add on to the already existing number that we have in SYTF, which, as you all know, those numbers are creeping up for various reasons. If we don't move in this direction of establishing an option such as LP, we're going to be in big trouble. We're going to see the kind of issues and of violence that we've been seeing over at the compound, Barry J, and other things that are happening. And I throw this also on top of that discussion is that we have to look at step downs for the folks who are coming down and look to the camps, to the various camps that we have as a step down option rather than straight SYTF confinement. And that's where we need probation to work with us on the defense side, allowing and providing those options as camp. What I can tell you, and it's not just anecdotally, is that on the defense side, the prosecution is filing a lot more transfer hearings because they've got certain policies, and it's turned into a leverage type of situation where do we want our youth to be tried as an adult, or are we going to plead them out to an SYTF? And unfortunately, that sometimes takes away the option of sending somebody to camp instead of SYTF. Using that as an option before they go to SYTF, and also considering that as an option for the youth that do come back from DJJ as a step down. But this goes back to the whole beginning of this discussion of we still haven't set up on a site. We haven't decided on the site, which goes back to what Commissioner Lewis said. We have to look at LP. It's frustrating. We've been doing this for a very long time. And for a number of reasons, I just feel that we're back where we started. And looking at the option that was presented last week with Scott being completed in 5 years at a cost of close to $40 million, that's just not a viable option. So I don't know if you have any questions, Chair, or anybody else. I joined Patricia's comments and assessment.
Thank you, Luis. I'm sure there'll be some comments, but in the meantime, Wendy, can we get the public section out of the way of any live or written public comments for this item?
Yes, I'm happy to do that. Janae, remind me if we had any written public comments on this item?
Not as of yet.
Okay, feel free to write a written public comment, info@poc.lacounty.gov. We had one pre-registered public comment, but it's from a person who does not appear to be logged on. So if you're calling in and want to make a public comment, please dial *3 on your phone. Or if you're here and would like to make a live public comment, please raise your hand using the raise your hand function or send a chat to the host. As of now, I do not see any public comment. Chair Carrillo.
Thank you, Wendy. Okay, I see a hand up. Commissioner Lewis, you're up.
Thank you, Chair Carrillo. Simply, I'd just like to motion now that we motion the Board of Supervisors to put back on the table or consider whatever language you're going to use to considering using Los Padrinos for a number of reasons. One, it's centrally located in Los Angeles County. Two, if you've been to Barry J, there's about a quarter of a mile that you have to walk through a homeless encampment. It's just, I wouldn't want my mom or my grandmom to have to navigate that if I was in juvenile hall. Two, when we talk about, in many of these instances, people have talked about flood zones and fire zones. Los Padrinos is not in neither a flood zone or fire zone. Again, it's in Downey, California. The feel of the facility is more of a campus feel. If you've been there, I've been there multiple times, including when I was a kid. And lastly, we do have, at least from what I understand, approximately after 779 hearings, approximately between 70 and 80 youth that will probably be coming back from LA, from the Department of Juvenile Justice. My numbers may be a bit high because I do know some kids are coming home, some young people are coming home, but you have a large number of people that will be coming, young people that will be coming home from the Department of Juvenile Justice that will have to go into the secure track facility. So if we're looking at a step down or first housing and then step down, which I think is the smartest thing to do, then we have to have a second location. I don't think Central Juvenile Hall would do it. I prefer not to use Barry J at all if it was my option, but we're literally hamstringing ourselves by not considering Los Padrinos. And then to bring it up to, and the last thing I'll say is this, to bring it up to the standard that we would like, I don't think it will cost $40 million. And I think it could be done much, much more quicker than Camp Scott and Scudder. And so I'd like to motion that we put Los Padrinos or take Los Padrinos into consideration as being the beginning or primary, whatever language you're going to use, SYTF.
Well, let's just make sure we got the language right, Commissioner Lewis. So I get the gist of it. Wendy, maybe, I mean, obviously, Sam, just to be, there was the motion seemed to be very expansive, but you're just saying to put motion to the board to reconsider or to, I'm sorry, to consider LP as a viable option for SYTF.
Correct.
Okay, and then we can get to discussion about all the other points you're making. Can I get a second before we open up to discussion?
I second Commissioner Lewis's motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Canales. Okay, commissioners, I see some hands here, so I want to just go around. Commissioner Meredith?
I agree with Sam. I think that Los Padrinos would make a much better facility, especially versus Camp Scott. We don't have to put as much money into it, and it's much more centrally located to where the families may be accessible to it with transportation and everything else. I know it's a controversial issue with the district that wants to use it for other purposes, but I think that Los Padrinos would be the best alternative.
Thank you, Don. Commissioner Canales?
Yes, thank you. I was just going to elaborate on what Commissioner Lewis was saying. I think it definitely makes sense. One question I did have was after looking into Camp Scott and then seeing it would take 50 months and 30 to 40 million dollars. Right now, we know just from what we know that you know, upon using Los Padrinos, that there wouldn't be this, oh, now we're finding this and it's going to take another, you know, 30 or 40 months or something like that. It does seem to be equipped and ready, right? From the information we have.
Is that a question more for probation, Doris?
Yes, I guess it would be more for probation because of the presentation on the cost and the environmental impact and the delays with Camp Scott.
And I apologize, Commissioner Canales, were you asking specifically about Los Padrinos and its readiness?
Right, yeah, I'm asking about Los Padrinos right now because you know how now we've discovered all this with Scott. Like, are we really foreseeing that Los Padrinos could be ready?
So ready may be relative. So what I think would be part of the challenge there is that it is an old facility. And so it is, we moved, obviously it was an emergency, but during Saddle Ridge, we moved 300 plus young people into Los Padrinos in a matter of 7 hours. And so it's ready in terms of being able to facilitate our young people. It would need some facelifting, and I think if we're all, I think we all are on the same page that these facilities need some upgrade, right? They need to be a different space than they currently exist. The benefit to Los Padrinos, it's a flat campus for those who've been there. It is spread out. You have individual units that you could upgrade unit by unit, as opposed to the way that some of the other facilities are laid out. So Camp Scott, you can't put anybody there until the thing is done. Whereas Los Padrinos, you could move in, renovate one of the units, move the young men into that unit, and then move on to the next unit, and so on. And DLR, we know for sure, has done this work in other jurisdictions where cost and time are an issue. So we could renovate and do some facelifting in a more modular fashion to get it ready sooner. I don't know about cost. That's some of the things. So some of the things that we did discuss at the subcommittee meeting are trying to find out how to do a deeper dive to make sure that we're on the right track. I think, as Patricia alluded to, we want to get some of the questions answered. I think we would like to get some of the questions answered before we really move towards kind of move in this direction. But time being of the essence, it is a facility that we could get ready. The school is new. There's ample classroom space and recreation space. The pool looks great for whatever that's worth. I mean, there's a lot of things going for it. It's centrally located, as Commissioner Lewis mentioned. There's a lot of things that we think it checks a lot of boxes. And you'll recall when we looked back at the scorecard that was originally done for the facilities, LP scored very high in terms of its readiness or sort of like closeness to being open, as well as some of the things that we've detailed. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you so much. You absolutely did. And I even see its central location as really benefiting the families and family reunification type programs, even maybe installing or building some type of like friends outside as they have in, other facilities, and that to be able to provide transportation, clothing, other resources. So yeah, I think it makes total sense. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Garcia-Leis?
Thanks. I'm also absolutely in favor of making Los Padrinos a SYTF facility. Ms. Song, did the Board of Supervisors take that off the table for you? Should the recommendation be sent to them? Do you have any strategic advice on how to make this happen and how to support your committee making this happen?
Thank you for the question. I do think that context really matters. So it has been a year and a half having various forms of this conversation. So I think context has changed as well. So when we had a conversation about potential facilities and what felt viable and formed the rubric that DLR created and used to score each of the facilities, our understanding was that not just LP, but a number of the facilities had other purposes, right? Either slated or already in use. And so I think this goes into the category of analyses to be done or information to be gathered to make sure, right? Like do our due diligence and explore what the current now context is for exploring a facility like LP. So it's both the cost and the time, building on the initial assessment in October by DLR of what it would take to prepare units or the whole facility to serve as an SYTF, doing a deeper dive on how LP is aligned or not aligned with SYTF, how it's being used currently. At that time, we were told that it was being used for homeless young women. And so we immediately took it off the table, as we did for Challenger, for Camp Gonzales, right? Like that was guiding sort of criteria in how we approached facility selection. But what I understand now, but I think, again, this is part of the due diligence and the analysis that we should do, is to understand how much of LP is being used, how many women are there, what is the plan for expanding use for women who are experiencing homelessness at LP. So really the living units analysis plus a kind of full facility analysis that is more up to date than October of last year. I do think that because the JJRBG is the statutorily created body to advise the board, this commission may want to consider moving maybe both the board and JJRBG or the JJRBG to begin with. I think it could go either way to bring a fuller analysis, both for the JJRBG itself, this commission, as well as the board.
Commissioner Nunn?
Thank you, and want to appreciate the motion being put forward. I was just wondering, I support the motion, but I always appreciate detail in this and timelines as well. So since we have at least 3 of the committee members here, and I know Ms. Song laid out some of them, I just wanted to see if we can add a little bit more detail to the motion and maybe get some additional feedback before we finalize it. What I heard so far, and others please correct me, is having a motion to recommend to the board to order, I guess, the JJRBG subcommittee to conduct a deep analysis of the feasibility of having Los Padrinos be another secure youth treatment facility, and taking specifically into consideration the following. I would like a list. What I've noted so far is the cost of renovations and the timeline it would take, how it's currently being used with specific details, including population, as well as any expansion plans, which was also considered a living unit analysis. I just was wondering if capture those and if there's anything else that should be included that I would like to include in the motion, and then also a timeline. We all know this has been taking a long time, so to the extent we can ask that the JJRBG be able to complete this analysis by a certain time, I think that'd be great too. But I'm also deferring to committee members specifically about what's reasonable.
Commissioner Dupuy?
Did you need an answer to your question first?
Yeah, I was gonna sorry, I was gonna ask if we could have Ms. Song or Mr. Rodriguez and Mr. Patino answer.
I think that's excellent. I'm curious if Mr. Patino or Mr. Rodriguez, is he still on, has anything to add? Oh, there you are.
I point my finger at Adam on this one. Given our meeting schedule, but I think our meeting schedule can always be adjusted.
It can. It certainly can. We're on calendar, I think, for next week, and then 2 weeks from that point. We have a report due at the end of the month. We certainly could work. I mean, there are some unknowns with the site. We just got to say, there's unknowns with the site. Everything. It's like your house. There's a leaky faucet, and it's an old house, and you think, oh, all I need to do is keep changing the faucet, and then you find out that you have an entire plumbing system that may need to be replaced, right? So there's some deeper diving that needs to happen, and that does take time. So there's a few weeks that we would want to take, but it does sort of boil down to options. I don't know what other options we have capacity-wise. We have over 100 young people who potentially are coming back to us between now and June 30th. So CDCR loses jurisdiction of those young people on June 30th. So some flow of young people will come to us well before that, because we're not going to just take on, the 80 who haven't been paroled or whatever the number may be. That includes young women. There's a lot of different things that are coming our way. So just by way of update, and I know this isn't exactly answering the question, but our teams are working with DJJ. We're forming a work group to start to work on individual cases and working with their clinical team to determine exactly what young people are going to need as they come back to us. And so, we've outgrown the facilities that we're currently using, and just based on these numbers alone, there's obviously a huge sense of urgency behind this. And so, folks, we may just need to be prepared to use part of these facilities as is until we can really do this substantive renovation that we want to do. Again, pointing to Los Padrinos, part of the reason it makes it attractive is we can do it in a modular fashion. You don't have to shut down the entire place to do parts of the renovation. So I don't know if that addressed the question, Commissioner Nong, but I do think that we're on the right track here in terms of absolutely needing a space. I will defer to others about how exactly you'd like the motion to come. You know, while we chair the JJRBG, it's pretty clear in the motion how the board wants this to, how the flow of information, how they would like it to go. And we've been asked to bring a recommendation from the JJRBG. So depending on how this goes, that'll be the discussion at our next public meeting. And that will be ultimately at least part of our report back to the board on August 31st.
Thank you. Just because I know the board is, or sorry, the commission is considering a motion, I just still, so then my recommendation would be to amend the motion to require an analysis that includes the factors listed initially. But I would like a timeline. And again, I I want to be reasonable. So if the analysis could be back, I don't know. I don't know if it's 6 weeks. I don't know if it's 1 month. Just if someone could give a
I
timeline.
don't know yet. So Public Works are the ones who hold the contracts with the architecture firms who've done this for us historically. We are meeting next week with their team to determine exactly that. So trying to figure out if they have somebody on retainer who can help us do this quickly. Typically they do. They keep folks there. I don't recall how long this analysis took. It was about 6 weeks, maybe longer, to get to where we are now. And part of that, to be totally honest, was all of the legal implications and the things that are kind of running in the background of this project, specifically at this location. That doesn't exist at the moment at Los Padrinos. There's a potential that it could go faster. If you call it 6 weeks, we'll try to hit it. I don't know if we will.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Nong, maybe I can interject with a possible solution to this. Maybe we could ask for a timeline on when to get a timeline. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I was, thank you. I was wondering if at least maybe we could require a report back, like in a month or something. That might be the easiest way to go.
I think I need to interject for a sec, everyone. I think we're at this point now, we're talking about two different motions. Commissioner Nung triggered one that Adam was answering to. So if just, I think just to make it very clear here, Commissioner, you want to start over, you want to adjust or maybe not adjust, you want to add to Commissioner Lewis's original motion, because it's felt like there was two motions sort of happening here at the same time. So thank you for clarifying that a little bit, but let's just get it fully clarified here. We still have just one motion. The motion is being clarified and things are being bullet pointed. Some things are being added to it. Commissioner Lewis, if you agree with that, first of all, and then we'll get a second on that. We still don't know what, actually, let's clarify exactly what you want to add to it. Before so we can open up discussion on that. But for now, let's get that out the way.
Sure. So my recommendation would be, Mr. Lewis, I hope I'm getting this right, but to recommend that the board conduct an analysis. I'm going to add in collaboration with the Juvenile Justice Realignment Block Grant Subcommittee to complete an analysis of the feasibility of having Los Padrinos be a secure youth treatment facility. That analysis shall include the following, something about include but not limited to the following: the cost of using it, the time it would take, how it's currently being used, as well as any expansion plans. And that this analysis would require that the analysis, or at least an update or report back on this analysis, be delivered to both the POC and the board within 1 month.
That agreed totally, but by encompassing all of those things, the additional analysis of costs and all those things will probably cause it to drag on more than a month. So it would almost be a two-step process. One would be to have the board to consider, or the what is RJBBG? I'm sorry. I have like a billion acronyms that I have
There are
to.
so many. JJRBG.
JJRBG, to consider including Las Padrinas as a viable option as one of the facilities used for the SYTF. If that's a yes, then all of the other analysis have to come, of course. And so the first one is just, if it's a yes, that can happen in less than 30 days probably. And then I don't know how long it's going to take for them to do cost with all the,
Before we get into another discussion on it, I think at this point now, we just want to make sure that you agree with the language from Commissioner Nong, and then we can open up the discussion.
I'm clarifying that if you put this in one motion, it's going to take 3 months. We have about 8, and you're going to have 100 kids here that need to go somewhere. Where are we going to put them? So I'm fine with it being one motion, but that one motion is so comprehensive, it's going to take a long time. If the viable option is if Las Virginias is included as a viable option, that's one step that can happen real quick.
Then let's,
The other
Sam, let me
part-
suggest this. Can we just do 2 motions then? We can do your motion, and we can just, get a vote on that, and then we can move on to Commissioner Nong's motion, because I think you're correct. We don't want to maybe stack it too high. And what you're just saying is, please just consider LP. We'll put it in your own words. We can get a vote on that and then move on to Commissioner Nong's motion.
I think that would probably be more effective and would move it forward faster.
I see Vice Chair Jackson's hand's been up for a while. If you want to chime in, please.
Well, I want how we gauge the viability of LP without the analysis. Is that the prerequisite for the recommend? I mean, I do agree, Commissioner Lewis, that having a motion so exhaustive can push things back, and we need some more immediate action, but it just feels like that step has to happen before to support the recommendation to consider LP.
So LP was removed from even being considered to begin with.
Okay.
This entire conversation started. And so it should have been, in my opinion, one of the facilities that we had an opportunity to consider to begin with. And that's basically what I'm saying. Like, and then like if that's a yes, because remember it was taken off because you had a pilot program that was happening there.
I see.
So I agree with you, Commissioner Jackson, but literally we didn't even have an opportunity to say, yes, we're going to look at it.
Wendy, your hand's been up for a while. Please chime in.
You're muted, Wendy.
Thank you. I was going to ask Deputy Chief Patino to chime in and basically correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what Commissioner Lewis is saying is correct in terms of the board motions, that there are 2 board motions that address SYTF sites. The first one addressed Kilpatrick as an interim site, and then asked the JJRBG to review additional sites, which is what prompted the scorecard. And then the second motion asked for, suggested that it was Kilpatrick and Scott as the only sites that would be reviewed as SYTF sites. So I think that's precisely what Commissioner Lewis is saying, is that the board is instructed for no other sites to be reviewed at this point. And therefore, if the JGRBG or probation or anyone else wants to review other sites, the board would need to make an affirmative decision to say that. Would you agree with how that's framed? Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Wendy. That's exactly the point. Thanks.
So maybe one motion is to the Board of Supervisors and one is to the subcommittee? Does it sound like that's where we are?
Patricia, there you are. I don't think we've made a motion to your, obviously you're one of many on the board here. Maybe this is more Adam then, but I mean, I would love to, believe that we have some sway over you guys, but you're listening here. Like do we have to really motion you to follow with what we're talking about?
I actually don't know the answer to that. So the way it's set up in statute is that probation chairs. So if you make a request to the chair of the JJRBG, then we at least bring it in and have that discussion. So I'll try to respond in a different way and kind of further explain our calculus on this. Is that because the board has asked the committee to come up with a recommendation, I think what's up next for discussion, and Patricia and Luis jump in here if I'm reading this incorrectly, but what's up next for discussion for us is reporting back on what the analysis says, including in the response that we have this capacity issue that's fast, sort of coming at us. And then do we actually make a recommendation for Los Padrinos or an additional site? So I think that's the discussion that needs to happen at the subcommittee. And then that becomes our recommendation to the board. And we haven't, there's no decision on that yet, right? That's kind of what we need to hash out in the next public meeting. And then we go from there. So it could be that the JJRBG comes to the same conclusion that this body seems to be coming to, or at least is motioning to, where both bodies sort of independently, although we're sort of colluding here a little bit maybe, but independently would come to a similar recommendation, and then we would wait to hear from the board. I hope that's clear. I don't know if it is, and I don't even know if it's clear in my mind, honestly.
It's pretty clear. Well, thank you, Adam.
I would use the word collaborating, not colluding necessarily, in part because I think both bodies are seeking some of the same information, right? I think we want to know more specifics about a facility that both bodies have put back on the table, essentially. And in many ways, I think this commission's endorsement of that doesn't stop the JJRBG down the road. It seems to be on anyways, right? Like, I think the discussion made it clear to me that in our upcoming meetings, we will be asking for more information. I do think it's more powerful because we're asking many of the same questions. I think JJRBG members, commissioners here share many of the same concerns for us to be sharing information and echoing to the extent that, our thinking feels aligned. So I think just to note that considering and doing the analysis does seem to go hand in hand. I think that I'm also challenging our JJRBG to be able to gather information in phases, right? Like, we tend to wait for all of it to be able to then discuss it, but there are pieces of information about LP that we can gather sooner than later. For instance, how many units are actually available and empty and not occupied, and to do a site visit and get a better sense of its current condition. And then other analysis might take longer to do. So if we come back in a month, we can at least report on the status of that analysis and information gathering.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioners. So I think the challenge has been sort of figured out. So I think we have two motions here. Wendy, do you have the language of Sam's original motion?
Yes, I think the original motion that was made by Commissioner Lewis and seconded by Commissioner Gonzalez, nope, not Commissioner Canales, is to make a resolution to the Board of Supervisors urging them to reconsider Los Padrinos as an SYTF site. I believe it's as simple as that. Is that correct, Commissioner Lewis?
That's correct.
Okay. Unless there's any more discussion on that specific motion. Oh, Commissioner Dupuy?
I do. Yeah, I never get to say anything. I'm just like, maybe there was too much happening, but is it even necessary to do that? I guess that's like my question. It's like JJRBG seems like they want to do it. I mean, I know it would be powerful for us to help say, go ahead and to make that recommendation, but like, is it, it doesn't, I don't know what weight that holds in a space where it already seems like it's going to happen. That's, I guess, my question.
If I can briefly interject, I think with JJRGB, we're good, but this motion would go a long way with the Board of Supervisors.
Thank you, Luis. Commissioner Meredith?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it's important for us to do the motion because it's going to give us much more influence. And as you know, the POC has been tasked with a lot of this oversight regarding the locations of this. So that's just my input.
Thank you, Don. Vice Chair Jackson? You're muted.
Can't hear you.
My question, I think, is actually to Patricia about one of the factors that is going to be analyzed. So maybe I'm a little bit ahead of that.
That's for the next motion.
Or can I ask? Okay, that's fine.
Commissioner Dupuy, is your hand still up?
Yeah, I have something for the next motion too, so I'll just put it down for now or keep it up.
Perfect. And this is more for myself. I'm also in support of this motion, but I think that we have to be, I guess I'm just to remind us that not only were people complaining about the floods and the fires, but just the fact that people just didn't want that facility in their neighborhood. And I think that Downey, as many of you know, is a very conservative part of Los Angeles. And so if we think that, the city will come or the resident will come with open arms, we have to be careful with that. And regardless if our position is as a commission that we are now taking LP as a serious viable site, then we have to stand firm with that decision and, town halls, in person, whatever we have to do to make sure that we convince the community, local officials and everyone else who's going to come against that this is the right thing. And so I know it's more work for us, but I think that it's obviously the right thing. Commissioner, okay, Wendy, can we get a vote on this, please?
Yes, please respond yes, no, or abstain to Commissioner Lewis's motion. Commissioner Canales?
Yes.
Commissioner Dupuy?
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia-Lays?
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson?
Aye.
Commissioner Lewis?
Yes.
Commissioner Meredith?
Yes.
Commissioner Nong?
Yes.
Chair Carrillo?
Yes.
And the motion passes unanimously.
Commissioner Nung, can we, would you please restate that motion?
Yes, thank you. Making a motion to recommend that the JJRBG subcommittee conduct an analysis of the feasibility of making Los Padrinos an additional security treatment facility site and to report back on the progress of the analysis in 30 days. The analysis shall include, but not be limited to, the following: detailed information on how Los Padrinos is currently being used and any related expansion plans, an analysis of existing living units, any costs associated with making Los Padrinos an SYTF, as well as the timeline it would take to do that. And I'm going to open it up if I missed anything else. But that's my motion right now.
Okay, can we get a second on it? Vice Chair Jackson seconds it. So now we can open it up for discussion. Commissioner Dupuy, you're up.
Thank you. And I hope I'm not throwing a whole nother thing in here, but I'm a little bit curious about the workforce piece. And I know that that's been a bit of an issue with the site designation. So I'm curious as to how we can address whatever challenges, or maybe that's part of the analysis to add. Maybe I'm looking for some recommendations around what language to add to the analysis around workforce, considering I know there have been some challenges identifying workforce to work with the SYTF youth that are in SYTF trajectory. So that's my question, comment.
Is that question specifically to Bettino or Patricia?
Yeah, any probation maybe, or anyone from JJRBG.
So yeah, I mean, I think where we are in terms of the staffing for SYTF, that's something that's still being discussed with labor, but I don't foresee, in fact, having an issue once we start to designate sites and get through some of this conversation, because we believe that we have folks who want to work with this population. It's just sorting through the special recruitment notice, which per the contract has to go through a meet and confer processes, which is what we're doing now. So the staffing issues that we're having currently are a little bit more wholesale and not specific to SYTF. And we don't foresee having an issue For a couple of reasons. So CEO is in agreement with us. They know that this is a new program, new legislation, and so they're going to be they'll be accommodating our requests for staffing for SYTF because they understand that it's a new program, and it was sort of thrust upon us. And then I think, as I said, I think we have enough folks who have expressed some interest in working with this population. I really don't foresee the same issues that we're currently having. That's our hope.
Commissioner Meredith, your hand still up? Okay. Vice Chair Jackson.
Yes, thank you. It looks like Commissioner Nong wants the analysis in part to look at the costs associated with making LP. I guess I'm wondering if we could also look at maybe how much money has gone into maintaining the facility over a course of time. I know that when we had our budget discussion, there's talks about maybe still spending money to maintain sites that have been decommissioned or partially used. And so maybe we can also look at any money that's been invested in maintaining the site. Maybe if it's viable still over time. Is that possible? Does that even make sense to include it for analysis from a financial perspective?
Vice Chair Jackson, is that number you're looking for designed to compare it to what's been used already, like in the work that's being done in Kilpatrick or the work that's being done in Scott?
Well, I heard Mr. Patino talk about, maybe you look at one thing and it turns out that there's this whole other systemic issue, maybe plumbing or something like that, And if it turns out that the facility is being occupied for something right now, maybe money is going into maintaining the site in one way or another. So I was hoping to hear back on whether, money has been invested in maintaining the site and to the extent that it's been done. Basically, does that make sense? But I see you kind of nodding.
It does. So the board actually asks departments to do deferred maintenance on old facilities. So it's just a way to keep it so that should we ever need it in the future for some unforeseen reason, we could have it a little bit closer to move-in ready. So there's kind of a board policy around deferred maintenance and funding dedicated to that. But that may not be required a motion. If it's something that the commission wants as part of the consideration, we can certainly go provide that. And then we also have some ongoing costs related to security at the site that probation would pay for. We would also be paying to maintain the grounds, mow the grass, make sure the grass doesn't die, all of those types of things. So there is a cost associated with that we can certainly just provide to the commission if it would be helpful.
Okay, it seems worth considering. Thank you for helping me clarify. I was struggling a bit with that. Thanks.
Commissioner Lewis.
Thank you, Commissioner Carrillo. I wanted to ask Commissioner Dupree, when you were asking about workforce development, did you mean in terms of employment for the youth or working with the youth that are currently in the facilities?
Yes, I meant because I know that there's staffing shortages currently, that there's, I think we're still waiting on
Absolutely.
the staff survey to see sentiment. And I know that those have been challenges even when talking about having the SYTF population in Kilpatrick. So just, in an analysis was thinking that maybe we should tackle some of those with analysis of Los Padrinos. That's what I meant.
So literally those things are being dealt focused on simultaneously. Here's one of the things that a lot of people don't realize. In conjunction with probation, Hollywood CPR, which is a college in West Los Angeles that allows young people to actually enter the union after they complete their classwork and training. And the union is production, grips, lighting, makeup. In the SYTF right now in Barry J, almost all of the youth are enrolled. And if they haven't been enrolled, they're writing letters to be able to be enrolled. And I got to give Scott the credit. Scott made this connection in conjunction with probation So they go to class now and they're doing that. And then just want to share this with you. This is from the Rams. Wanted to see if we had time to figure out how to work with youth justice through LA County probation to help youth that are incarcerated. And so there are many things that we're working on in conjunction. On the 25th, as a matter of fact, the Rams are going into Barry J. And so these are connections that are literally being made. And right now they're virtual and some of them are in person. But so to speak, they're kind of like stacking up and just waiting for us to be able to, once we determine which facility we're going to be at, these things will fall in place. And some of them are already being put in place because like Hollywood CPR is a big deal. Like there are young people and adults that have gone through this program that are literally in the production unit for film as we speak, making six-figure salaries. Thank
you, Sam. Guys, let's just stay on this topic about this motion. We need to vote once discussion is over. Ms. Sung, if this is relating to the topic, please proceed. If not, we can hold off a little bit.
I think it's related, and I don't know if I'm messing up the rules here. I'm a panelist, and this is commission discussion. But I do want to underscore one of the lessons learned that I think I didn't articulate clearly enough, that the information gathering was both about the facilities, but also about community engagement. And in the past, the JJRBG has really appreciated this commission's role and ability to engage the community. I think it's been hard for local communities to hear about a proposal well before they themselves have ever heard about it. And so it's not necessarily part of this motion, but just to, or maybe it is part of this motion, to think about gathering that information or doing outreach to Downey, right, to consider feedback as we do this analysis. So I'm not sure where it goes.
That's a great point. Thank you so much, Ms. Sung. I think that, I guess we're all being asked to sort of like remember these lessons that we just recently learned or brought to our attention, which led to lawsuits and led to some major setbacks. But Ms. Nung, Commissioner Nung, I'm not sure if that has to do with the motion itself, if you want to consider that.
Yes, I'm happy to consider it. Trying to fiddle with the wording. I don't know if you want me to just try to read out the motion as stated and just throw in that extra piece if you want. I don't know what's easiest.
Throw it in.
Okay. Do you want the full motion? I'm guessing.
Just add that'd be a new bullet. I think Wendy, I assume you got someone has it on your side. Yep, we got it.
Okay.
We have what has currently been proposed.
Okay, so I'm gonna add. By the way, I added in something else. I'm sorry. So can I just read out from the beginning because I'm going to lose it otherwise? And I think I added something else. So I have a motion to recommend that the JJRBG subcommittee conduct an analysis of the feasibility of making Los Padrinos an additional SYTF site and to report back on the progress of the analysis in 30 days. The analysis shall include, but not be limited to, the following: detailed information on how Los Padrinos is currently being used and any related expansion plans, and the cost and timeline for any necessary renovations, and the ability to conduct the work in a phased approach. The next bullet: information gathered from community outreach activities conducted by the JJRBT, specifically in the communities where Los Padrinos is located. Did that sound right?
I see a thumbs up from Commissioner Dupuy. Can we get a second? Someone can second that?
Seconded by Commissioner Jackson.
There you go. We got a second. Any more discussions on this before we go on to a vote? Okay. Wendy, can you call a vote, please?
I'm happy to call the vote, except for I just lost my list of commissioners. Here we go. We are voting on the motion by Commissioner Nong, seconded by Commissioner Jackson, regarding the recommendation to the JJRBG subcommittee. Commissioner Nong has provided the text of the motion for us and also read it out. So can you please vote yes, no, or abstain when I call your name? Commissioner Canales?
Yes.
Commissioner Dupuy?
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia-Lays?
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lewis,
Yes.
Commissioner Meredith,
Yes.
Commissioner Nong,
Yes.
and Chair Carrillo.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thanks, everyone. Panelists, really appreciate your input and your insight. That was very, very helpful. Thank you. Moving on to item number 7, we will hear general updates on the probation department from Chief Deputy Pitino. Hi, Adam.
Hi, and Chief Fletcher and I will kind of share this one and keep it very brief because we're towards the end here. So I think the big update, honestly, there's a handful of things that I've written down. We did get some authority from the CEO to move forward with some hiring. So I think what we shared, and a lot of that honestly can be credited to some of the conversation at our last meeting around staffing and some of the concerns and the concerns expressed by the commissioners here. So we have been able to move forward with conditional offers and hire up to 150 staff. So that number really is, we hope is flexible because we're trying to keep up with attrition, get a start, get something going, bring some folks into the pool, so to speak, and then just quickly too, there's a couple of the other things that we're trying to address simultaneously. So we've made some adjustments to our background process. We removed polygraph, made modification to the questions around marijuana specifically. We are working with Department of Human Resources to do some enhanced communication as well. So trying to develop a plan around how we're communicating about various things. And then on the back end, working with disability management to make sure that we're really working with folks to get them back to work at the same time as we're starting to run some academies and get new staff. Because both things, we're all aware both things need to happen. We need to get a few folks in the door, and then we also need to work really hard to get people back to work. So that's kind of the big announcement. There's a lot of other things going on, and I'll kick it over to Chief Fletcher.
Thanks, Adam. I just wanted to kind of bring up again our work with Young Women's Freedom Center. We're working on ways to bring them in more consistently, but they are at this point volunteering to come in, which is great, while we work on a more formal process. The girls absolutely loved it. They met with quite a few of them and got some great feedback about that. Also working through an organization called Pause for Life. They're out in Mission Hills and they want to do some dog training with our young people. We are really focused on the site at Kilpatrick because it looks like that is the best place for secure youth track coming in, even if it's a step down where kids can have the dogs on site and be able to train them throughout the day and evening. So very excited about that. They have guaranteed job placement in either dog grooming or vet tech type positions. So it really is a certificate program once they're through. I was able to go out and visit the site and got my fix of puppies that were there. So that was a win-win for me. But there's some great stuff happening. The staffing levels have been better in our juvenile halls. We were really struggling at Central and then again at Barry J. And both of those have balanced out a little bit. So we're monitoring that closely as we, really support our staff coming back and trying to make some changes in the units to make sure that they are safe for our staff and our youth. So that has been great. So more to come as time goes on, but we are making some progress and certainly appreciate our staff who are coming to work. So thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Adam. Wendy, do we have any live or public comment for this?
No one pre-registered, and I don't see any hands raised. If you'd like to raise your hand, we'll give you a moment to do so, or dial *3 on your phone. I don't see anyone who wishes to give public comment on this item.
Thank you, Wendy. Commissioner Dupuy, see your hands up.
Thank you, and I'll be brief as well. I know we're at the end. I wasn't at the previous meeting, and I'm constantly concerned about like the staffing, as you all know. And I know there was a survey. I'm interested in the results of those surveys because I feel like this push to bring on additional staff misses the root cause of why we're having staffing shortages to begin with. And we're still like a little bit, I don't know, I feel unclear as to why the staffing has, I have ideas, but nothing concrete, and feel like there might be something else that doesn't require a massive hiring effort. Like if the concerns of staff who aren't showing up to work were addressed. Just curious as to what those are, and how have we been taking steps to address what those underlying concerns might be. My thought was that the survey was supposed to give us some of that understanding. So just wanted to ask for that and see if there's any response to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner. So it really is kind of a snowball effect, right? And we have been working very closely with Department of Human Resources for the county and also the CEO's office to address some of the outstanding issues. So we have a significant number of vacancies in our juvenile halls specifically. 46% of our items are vacant. On top of that, we have a significant number of people who are out on leaves, whether that is an injury that happened at work or any kind of medical leave. So of our filled positions, we have 59% of those filled positions out on leaves. And so what happens is with the reduced number of staff on site, then the safety and security for both the youth and our employees is compromised. And so people then get held over and have to work 16-hour shifts, and then they get burned out, they get injured, they don't feel safe, so they begin to call out. So it really is kind of that snowball effect with the root cause being some of the low staffing numbers. And so we are working very closely with DHR to address the leaves and with the CEO's office to address vacancies. And so as Adam reported, we have some permission, some limited permission to hire, but we know that once we get that going, that will improve the overall atmosphere and environment in the institutions. And then we'll continually assess. We are not in any way interested in just filling every vacancy. We want to do what's right. At the same time, parallel to that, DHR and the CEO's office are doing a right sizing exercise. They did that with our camps. They are currently doing that with our 2 juvenile halls, and they will do that with our field operations as well to make sure that we're really closely analyzing what our population is, both in custody and who we are serving in the community, and how that matches to the staffing levels. So we're very cognizant of that, as is DHR and the CEO's office, so as not to overhire. But it is that constant really vicious cycle of the vacancies and no one there and the holdovers and injuries. So we believe that resolves it. We can share, I think, more in general. Safety and security is at the top of the list, right, of the low morale that we're experiencing. But I think as we move forward, we can share some of those findings through the survey. We'd be happy to do that.
Commissioner Garcia.
Yeah, so I'm also interested in that, very interested, but and maybe it's the old union organizer in me, listening to management's version of the opinion of disgruntled staff doesn't strike me as the best way to really figure out the problem is. They have elected representatives who can speak for them. I have a question for Frankie or Wendy. I know the union has not been very receptive to our past efforts to reach out to them, but have we reached out to them in the last couple months to ask if they'd be interested in speaking to the commission?
So we have had meetings, regular meetings with 721 SEIU, and Frankie and Deshay met last week with PMA, the managers union, and we talk occasionally with members of 685 in different situations, but haven't invited them to come to the meeting directly. I think the invitations in the past have been about questioning them about things, and perhaps an invitation to state their position on things might have different reception for 685. But I feel confident the other 2 unions would be willing to come in and talk to you.
So I don't want to
Can I just clarify to make sure everyone understands that we did an internal survey of just the 2 juvenile halls, but there was a broader survey that really supported anonymity, and it was through DHR so that it wasn't coming from probation, and they got a significant response rate. So we feel like, you know, it wasn't necessarily just management asking, it was from DHR as well that we can share.
Thanks. So I'm not interested in making a motion on this right now. I'm just gonna put that on Frankie and Wendy on your radar of things that I would like to see if you can fit it in. And next time this conversation comes up on the agenda.
Thank you. Commissioner Lewis?
Thank you, Commissioner Carrillo. I would suggest do what I do. When I go into juvenile hall, I talk to the staff and I ask them, how many times have you been ordered over? And then I go in there enough where I know who the staff are. And so when you have deployed staff that are actually like you almost know who doesn't fit in, so to speak. Like, and I'll ask like, is this your normal post? And they say, no, I was deployed. Well, what do you normally work at? And most of them are adult probation. Here's something interesting too. A large number of Kilpatrick staff have been transferred to the juvenile halls. And the first group that went, there was a disturbance, and like 7 of them ended up going out to the hospital. I take no sides in this. This is simply reporting and things that I see every week, and sometimes multiple times a week when I go into the juvenile halls and I ask questions. And I'm not like, I see the staff that are consistently there, and I ask them, how do they feel? And just to be honest, like they're just as pissed at the people that are calling out and want their coworkers to show up, because they're gonna show up. And these are the staff that I tipped my hat to because they're there and they're trying. And then you also have a significant number of just vacancies. Going into juvenile hall last week, Central Juvenile Hall last week, I forget what they're called, they're 101s where PO literally has to sit with one youth and can't go anywhere, literally sit right almost like feet away from them. And that staff has to be 101 for whatever mental health reasons are throughout the day and in shifts. And so what I do, not only going in and working with the youth, I'm looking and asking a bunch of questions. And sometimes I don't get answers because it's almost like, who are you? And like I tell them, like, I want to be able to say these things so I understand them. Why do they have to have just one person sitting here with this young person? Because they have to make sure that this young person is okay. And so that at all times, you have to have one-on-one with this person. And so when you see just across the board, it's like, I don't agree with it. I would love to be able to say probation doesn't need staff. But if I want to bring in a group of people to run football drills, I need security there and staff there to be able to make sure that we can do that. And when it's not enough staff in there, it just doesn't happen. And that's the reality when you're going in there consistently seeing it. And for the biggest thing is it hurts the kids because they can't get consistent programming. And it also makes staff not want to come to work. Last thing I'll say, this is not unique to LA. This is unique across the country. We just did a big training in DC with Oklahoma, Wisconsin, and Alabama. Every corrections or probation department and DJJ facility is having staffing issues, including New Beginnings in Washington, D.C. that we're trying to model the Credible Messenger model after.
Thank you, Sam. And, going back to Commissioner Garcila's comment, Commissioner, you're so right. Many of us commissioners, I'm sure, I suppose you do as well, field a lot of text messages, emails, calls from staff members of all levels who are concerned about the department's health, and the goal is to make it better. Just recently, this meeting with PMA, one of the unions, I left the meeting thinking it would be great to have a roundtable with folks who are concerned about this as well, which is everyone. And I think sometimes we're still, I feel like I'm getting myself caught up in these silo conversations where we should have everyone here, even folks who want to call in and share what their frustrations are, to folks who are, being paid to represent specific groups. And I think that maybe a conversation that we should all have about how do we have some kind of symposium or have a closed door meeting where people feel comfortable sharing what they want to say, and that there be, it's more like a listening symposium, I suppose. But, my next agenda item is to see if any commissioners or staff members have any any matters they want to post for future agenda items. And, I will start that off. It's an item that normally gets ignored, but I will start that off as a conversation starter to have a broader POC meeting. If it has to be live because we're all there, that's one thing, or if we can split it so it can be behind closed doors, I'm totally open to that. But I think that people who we've been hearing from should be in the room with other groups that directly can communicate. I think that it's great that we can sort of be taking in this information, but I think other people should be directly hearing these gripes. And so my request is to, as an agenda item, to maybe think about how we can create this, wherever this thing is, a safe space, I suppose, people can talk. So item number 8 is any items not posted on the agenda to discuss in future meetings. If any commissioners or staff members, I see Commissioner Nong and then Wendy.
Thank you. I would like to put or propose putting on a future agenda a discussion on the projections or estimates that are currently being made on the number of youth that need to be housed in security treatment facilities. I've just been looking at the numbers and I just have some concerns to explain why I want this on the agenda. One, that there's an assumption that all the youth who are currently in DJJ who aren't having parole hearings beforehand need to come home to security treatment facilities. I know people having discussions with folks even in DJJ right now, staff and leadership, who are saying that not everyone who's coming home, even if not paroled, needs to go home to secure track. So that's a concern I have about the numbers being put forth right now. And I'm also concerned about talking about the number of young people who are currently being recommended by probation to security treatment facilities and then dispositioned, because that could be a possible reason for the recent uptick, big uptick in the population of the halls. So I would love to have that as an agenda item and then maybe think ahead of time about who would be appropriate as panelists for that, as well as any questions we could submit beforehand.
Wendy?
Great, thank you. I will note that, Commissioner Nong. And yes, Chair Carrillo, we have talked about doing a town hall where we have less than a quorum of commissioners included that would be related to the Training and Personnel Subcommittee, where we could invite probation staff to come in, perhaps somewhere like at the Hall of Administration. So that's something Dr. Reynoso and I have been talking about, and we're happy to move forward with that plan if that's how you'd like us to move. I would like to let folks know that there are at least 3 and possibly 5 commissioners who are going to be out on August 25th. So I think you might consider rescheduling or canceling that meeting. Alex, do we need to have a motion to cancel the meeting, or is that something we can just do as long as we have time to do that in advance?
I believe that's something you can just do. I don't think you need a motion to cancel the meeting.
So I guess my question is, does anyone have any particular concerns about canceling that meeting? And if not, then Chair Carrillo and Vice Chair Jackson and Secretary Canales and I can make that decision.
Okay, hearing no objections. Wendy, so you're just saying, you want decisions to be made now?
Well, I think what Alex is saying is that we can just cancel it since we have 2 weeks before doing it. I just wanted to know if anyone was particularly opposed to doing so. Sounds like there isn't anyone.
Yeah, I think we just cancel it then.
Okay.
Thank you, Wendy. And as to your thing, as to your point about what's been going on already, if we can move forward with that, Wendy, it'd be great. Moving on now to item number 9 is an invitation for members of the public to address the commission on items not on the agenda. Wendy, will you please facilitate this public comments for us?
Yes, I will. There was one written public comment which will be attached to the agenda. Please feel free to submit other written comments to info@poc.lacounty.gov. Raise your hand if you'd like to make public comment about items not on the agenda. And we'll start with call-in user number 20. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. Your number starts with 310625. Call-in user number 20. We're going to unmute you, and I think you need to dial *6 on your phone to be able to speak. Oh. Well, that call-in user just dropped off. So I think, right, Janae?
Yes, they just, or they lowered their hand.
Well, that might have been unintentional. Let's see. It was call-in user number
Hello.
20. Oh yeah,
Hello?
great. We can hear you. You can begin.
Oh, okay. Yeah, this is Cookie Lamel with Local 685. And I'd like to answer a couple of questions that the person before when she talked about staffing. One of the things that we're doing this Tuesday at 10 a.m. on the steps of the Hall of Administration, because we have an average of 25 officers a month being assaulted by justice-involved youth every single month. That's 98% more assaults than our sister and brothers, for example, in Orange County probation. And we're 15 times more likely to be assaulted than those working in the sheriff's facilities. That is the biggest issue of all of our staff. When they walk out, they keep telling me when I'm visiting people, they'll say, Cookie, when I come here, when I come to work, and however I come, I want to be able to go home to my family. I'm not sure I can do that. And when you think about that, as of last Sunday, one of our staff was pushed and thrown to the ground by one of the justice-involved youth, and he ended up with a broken hip. He was in the hospital for several days. But another part of that is that when they go in to have whatever medical issues attended to, Sedgwick, which I think Wendy and I had a conversation about this, Sedgwick, which is the third-party organization that will say, okay, you can go and to this hospital, you can see this doctor, whatever your issues are, they are in charge of that. And that could take over a year to get your injuries attended to. So we're having
Cookie, that's your time for today. Although I would like to acknowledge that Commissioner Garcia-Leyes and other commissioners have invited us to bring you on to the agenda, you or someone else representing 685, at our next meeting where we discuss either staffing issues or the SYTF issues. So thank you for joining us. We have one more public comment. That is Jose. Jose, we are going to unmute you. And you may have to click unmute yourself as well. Okay, you should be good to go. Jose, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, welcome.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to respond to that last comment real quick. If LA County probation is experiencing this much violence and other counties are not, maybe that has a lot more to do with how probation officers are treating our youth in the camps. And maybe we need to look at these other models in other counties and find out why these assaults are not happening. Because I choose not to believe that the youth of LA County are more violent than the youth of Orange County. I think that it's about training and about the way that we're treating the youth that are in the custody of the LA County Probation Department. Because for that much violence to happen, there definitely has to be something outside of just the youth being more violent, as the previous caller stated. So I'd really like to this commission to look at the other models that she just named that have a lot less violence, and how are those probation officers dealing with the youth in their facilities, and why is there not violence happening to the degree that's happening in LA County? To keep putting the blame on the youth, I think is just not an effective way to get to a positive solution, so that both LA County probation staff is safe and our youth are safe. So that's all I had to really offer up on that point. Thank you, Wendy, and the rest of the commission.
Thank you, Jose. And with that, Chair Carrillo, we have completed public comment.
Okay, thank you. Thanks everyone for.
Actually, Mr. Bell just raised his hand. So do we want to, I think we
Let him in, yeah.
All right, go ahead. Actually, we've got two more. I'm assuming that's you, Mr. Bell. It may be another Thomas that you could surprise me. We're going to unmute you and you'll have to press unmute yourself.
Okay. Thank you for the recognition.
Thomas, you're
I'm
okay.
here.
There we go. Let's start again, please.
Okay, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. It's Thomas Bell, same one. I just wanted to just respond with what Cookie said. You know, it is all about safety. And with the people not showing up to work and everything, you know, if they don't feel safe, how are you gonna come to work? You know, I have up to a year and a half worth of time if I wanted to call off. If I don't feel safe, I don't feel like I'm gonna come home to my daughter the same way I left. Why am I gonna go in there? And to the gentleman that has called, we're not blaming the youth. We're not blaming them at all. We're blaming the people who give them the power to do these things and take away our authority to prevent it from happening. If you go to Orange County, what they do in Orange County, you guys continually say it's child abuse over here. They keep people, they hold kids accountable over there. They don't have that many assaults because if they assault a staff over there, they get held accountable. They go back to court. They get more time. They do this. Over here in LA, we can't do that. They don't get more time. They go right back to the unit and they laugh about what they did to their friends. Now their friends are empowered to do the same thing that they just did. So we're not blaming the youth. We're blaming the people who empower the youth in order to get away with these things. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have one more call-in user. That is number 41. Your number starts with 866. And I think you are unmuted.
Yes, I am. Thank you for your time, Director Julie. Just two quick things. I'll tag on to what Mr. Bell just said, and I agree. No one's blaming the youth. No one's blaming the adults. We're pretty much just blaming the situation, and it's an unfortunate one, but it's one that we have. There are different restaurants because there are different approaches. Different counties have different approaches and guidelines and jurisdictional procedural concerns that don't allow for the same actions and the same avenues. Well, that was one thing. The second thing, we're here all to collaborate and to work together. And that's one thing I know that was a major theme in the beginning of the Probation Oversight Commission and a lot of the callers. So in an attempt to encourage and inspire that level of collaboration, I ask for everyone to be cognizant and look into the variety of community advisory committees that the Probation Department hosts on a regular basis all throughout the county. And if there are any CBOs, faith-based organizations, credible messengers, or commissioners yourselves that would like to participate and have any affiliations with the East San Fernando Valley area, feel free to give me a call and we can connect offline and where you can join our dialogue where the community and the Probation Department are working together to provide resources and services. My phone number is area code 310-365-6338, and I'll be looking forward to anyone who wants to collaborate in an attempt to move this entire agenda on both sides, which should be one side, forward with progress. Thank you for the time and for the space.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. And that's the end of public comment. Chair Carrillo.
Thank you all for your comments. As a quick reminder, be sure to follow us on social media at LA County POC. Also subscribe to our new YouTube channel by searching Probation Oversight Commission and clicking subscribe to receive reminders about our upcoming meetings. Visit our website at poc.lacounty.gov to subscribe to our email listing. It is now 2:53 p.m. and I adjourn this meeting. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.